Norway. Norway.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Uger, John, I roll with you guys. Exciting day as always, of course. So Jeffrey Epstein's dead. We're going to talk about it in a second.
Spoiler.
I know, sorry about that. If you haven't seen that movie yet, but I think a lot of us have seen that movie. So we will talk about the predictions that came ahead of time about how that was going to go down. So anyway, that's coming up in a second. And the Trump administration once again proving that they are anti all immigrants, not just undocumented immigrants. Of course, someone threatens to kill AOC. Unfortunately, that's a fairly common occurrence these days. And the list goes on and on of the crazy things that are going on today. Tomorrow, by the way, Bill de Blasio on the program. So mayor of New York, running for president, latest presidential candidate to sign the Progressive Pledge. So that'll be it. He did indeed, here in LA. He's the only one to actually physically sign a piece of paper, which I liked. 8 o'clock Eastern on tomorrow's show, Bill de Blasio for a full half hour. And then later that night, Ron Perlman is gonna join us on Old School. So
what?
I like them apples. So me, Ben, and Hellboy.
And me. Right?
No.
Me too?
We don't really have you scheduled, John. No, sorry to tell you that. That's at 9:30 Eastern tomorrow. So a hell of a show for you today and tomorrow. So with that said, let's get going.
Okay, let's do it. In the words of Cenk Uygur, Jeffrey Epstein's dead. Okay, that's a simple way to put it, but it's huge news, although not necessarily nobody saw it coming. I mean, it's the sort of thing where a lot of people did suspect that something like this might happen. But I guess jokes aside, he's a terrible person, but he is dead. He was found unresponsive in his cell Saturday while he was awaiting trial on new federal allegations that he sexually abused dozens of young girls in the early 2000s. After being found, he was taken to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. All this occurred relatively early on in the day. And that left us with a weekend where we gradually learned a little bit more about what had led to one of the most high-profile prisoners in the entirety of the United States being free to supposedly commit suicide with nobody watching, nobody checking in, despite the fact that not long ago he was on suicide watch. They just left him alone, and they say he committed suicide. That's the idea.
Yes, so that is not definitive yet. That's very important. So the authorities are still looking into the matter, which is a good note of caution because even if it was a suicide and even if they were sure, they should double check, triple check, and quadruple check because for all of history, their work will be re-examined.
Exactly.
So look, if you were trying to launch 1,000 conspiracies, this is exactly how you would have done it, right? If you were trying to kill someone, this is exactly how you would have done it. But by the way, if you were committing suicide, it's also how you would have done it. So no one knows. And so I have 1,000 things to say about this, but let me start with the most important 2 things. No one knows what happened. So the people who are claiming that it's a suicide, you weren't, I mean, well, both sides. Let's start with suicide. Okay, I'm supposed to believe that everything that the government says is always true, and if I don't believe that under extraordinary circumstances, and I wait for it to be proven, somehow that's like crazy talk. No, the rational thing is whatever government officials say is immediately true, and everyone else is a conspiracy theorist. No, I don't accept that at all. Now, the other side, the people who say it definitely wasn't a suicide and he was killed. How do you know? Were you there? I wasn't there. You weren't there. How do you know? If you say it's suspicious, apparently the whole world is with you, right? My wife read it in Chinese news, and she's like, yeah, she's like, oh, did you hear they already deleted all the video? I'm like, no, that's not true. No.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of comments to that effect, and I'm like, well, like there's a lot of weird stuff. That's not what's wrong and weird about it, but there's a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, so there's a big, giant, fat, we don't know yet. Okay, so be wary of anyone telling you that they know on either side.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure though.
Is that right? Okay.
Pretty 99% sure, I think.
Okay, all right. So let's look more at the facts because as you'll see, some of them are highly questionable. And if this was an act of incompetence, which is totally possible, it is historic incompetence.
Yeah. So let's run through what we do know. We know that his body was found in the shape of a Q. I'm kidding, okay, that didn't happen, but I'm sure Don Jr. will tweet it later. So look, he wasn't checked on for several hours before he was found dead on Saturday. Authorities believe he died by suicide because he was found hanging in his cell, which, yeah, I could see that. I mean, that's the first thing you'd think of.
Now, but it wouldn't be the only thing.
It wouldn't be the only thing, yes. Right. But the New York City Medical Examiner released a statement Sunday evening saying she could not make a full determination on Epstein's cause of death until she had more information, which is fine and responsible. He was supposed to be checked on every 30 minutes and should have been given a cellmate. The person assigned to share a cell with him was transferred on Friday, so the day before, and wasn't replaced. He was reportedly on suicide watch after an initial apparent attempt on his life about 3 weeks ago, but only stayed on it for 6 days. Now, a little bit more details about the suicide watch. This came out just a couple of hours ago. Defense attorneys pushed for him to be taken off suicide watch ahead of his death on Saturday. An unidentified source told ABC News. Sources told ABC News that Epstein had to undergo multiple psychiatric evaluations before officials decided to take him off suicide watch. There's likely no video showing his apparent suicide death. As sources told ABC News, it does not appear that cameras are trained on individual cells in the special housing unit where he was held.
Okay, so let's dive into a couple of those things.
Perfect storm.
Yeah, it really is. And there's more about the perfect storm of coincidences. And it really might be that for the 88th time. So first off, he had a cellmate for a while because when somebody is on suicide watch, you want someone else in the cell because if they go to hang themselves, presumably that cellmate will alert the authorities, right? He had a crooked cop with him who was put away for a murder. First of all, another giant surprise there. A crooked cop was in jail? Wow.
We got one.
Okay, so fascinating. Anyway, apparently Epstein claimed, true or untrue, that he was afraid of that his cellmate. They moved him out. They should have moved someone in. That is definitely regulation that he must have another prisoner with him in his cell, especially if he's tried to commit suicide before. And they ignored that regulation, and that was just not the case, okay, in this situation. Then the video. Look, I don't think it's reasonable to expect that there would be video inside the jail cell. I think that's too much of an invasion of privacy under any circumstance. But is there video around the jail cell? Of course there is. Now, as I said on Twitter over the weekend, if any of that shows up missing, that's it, fire everybody. Fire the Southern District of the district attorney for the Southern District of New York, fire Bill Barr, fire any Republican, any Democrat in any way attached to this, from the lowest person to the highest person, because then there will be nothing that could convince me that there's a series of coincidences that also involve missing tapes from that prison block, right? But that does not appear to be the case right now. In fact, right now we don't know anything about video.
So you're saying definitively he didn't do it?
Okay, stop. Stop it, all right? So,
100%? You're saying?
No.
Whoa, you're more sure than usual.
No.
Usually you're wishy-washy, you know?
So let's see what the video situation is. If any of it is missing, that's beyond a coincidence. Then I won't accept anything the government says, anyone in charge of this current investigation, right? But presuming that the videotape is there, it'll be interesting to see, and it'll be super important and relevant to see, did anyone come by his jail cell? If there is video of the hallway and no one came into his cell, then it is far, far more likely to be a suicide. If someone came in, probably not a suicide. Okay, so that's why videotape is so important if they have it of the hallway.
Just to add one more layer to this though, there's the debate between did he commit suicide or did something else happen? And you can fill in that blank in a lot of different ways, but that's not the only distinction. It's not just was everything okay and he committed suicide, or was there a big conspiracy and he was killed? There could also be, was he left in a position where he could commit suicide by somebody who wanted him to commit suicide?
Yes, and so the fact that they took his cellmate away, they took him off of suicide watch on Friday. Man, if you were trying to set up a conspiracy, this is how you would do it. And then they had guys who were supposed to check in on him, officers every half hour. They wound up checking on him every 2 to 3 hours. They put a couple of really overworked guards on that shift. So one that had been doing overtime for 5 straight days, another one that was on mandatory overtime. To John's point, the third scenario was if you knew the guy was prone to committing suicide, and you wanted to set up an ideal situation for him to commit suicide just in case, this would be it. But if that's your version of the conspiracy, man, that's a conspiracy where you really got to cross your fingers and hope to get lucky. So
that's true. But if that was your flavor, it would be buttressed by the fact that 3 weeks ago he apparently tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
So it's not insane to think that he might, again, and especially when you add the extra layer, which is the cache of documents that came out like 24 hours before this happened. And some of it we already knew, some of it was additional information, but just to give an idea of a little bit that came out. So there was one individual, Virginia Roberts, Jeffrey, I believe her name is. So she's one of the people that was trafficked by this ring, and she names like the people that got her involved and things like that, but also names a lot of the people that she says she was forced to have sex with or directed to have sex with, including a late scientist, a modeling scout, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former Senator George Mitchell, a hotel magnate, a prominent hedge fund manager, this guy Alan Dershowitz nobody has ever heard of, and Prince Andrew as well. And this information, like there was a huge amount of additional information that had just come out.
Pritzker is a giant Democratic family in Chicago, big donors to the Democratic Party in general, and now obviously in charge in Illinois. And so huge names on there, both Republican and Democrat. You know, look, I hope this is not unfair, and it might not be connected to this at all. But in Washington, I always used to hear 2 rumors, one about a Republican and one about a Democrat. And I always thought they were, I don't know. After all this, I'm still kind of naive, right? Like, come on, it can't be true. One of the rumors was that there was a Republican senator who go into the men's bathroom at Union Station and have sex with guys that he found there. I was like, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. There's no Republican senator having sex in public in a men's bathroom in Union Station, the biggest train station in Washington, D.C. Turns out that was totally true, Larry Craig. Okay, totally true. Even though I found it to be the most unbelievable thing I'd ever heard. The other rumor I heard, and it doesn't mean that this is true, was people would always say, oh, Bill Richardson, a really interesting governor of New Mexico, did a lot of the things in government. A lot of people thought him for vice president, but the girl issue.
I've never heard anything about that.
Okay, yeah, and so that could mean 1,000 different things, okay? And by the way, it might have been woman issue, not girl issue. It's a vague recollection from a long time ago, right? Does that mean he's having affairs, which would make him the same as 90% of politicians, right? But all of a sudden his name pops up here. But look, it's just, the reason I bring it up is tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of super powerful names we already know about, and some we might not know about. Remember, they got a bunch of CDs from his safe. Why was he keeping them in the safe that were labeled, Epstein's had labeled them as something about young girls, right? Was it just young girls or guys with young girls? And so now that brings me to a CNN report article written right before Epstein died. So obviously they had no idea that he was going to die. This is graphic 7 and 8. So it's a legal analyst doing commentary for CNN, writing, "We do not yet know who else might be implicated, but we have an important clue. The Southern District is staffing the case primarily with prosecutors from its public corruption unit. U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman urged the public, and quote, not to read into, of course. U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman urged the public, quote, not to read into the unit assignment anything one way or another. But that is nonsense. You absolutely should read into this staffing assignment," the analyst says here. "As a Southern District alum, I know that it is both unusual and significant that the public corruption unit is running this case. Normally, a sex trafficking case would be prosecuted only by the human trafficking coordinators who are part of the violent and organized crime unit that I once supervised. Public corruption is involved here for a reason. There must be at least one public official, past or present, involved in the case in some way." Now, when you have a unit that is looking at public corruption, and then he's in a government jail, and all of a sudden a series of remarkable coincidences happen that leaves him either prone to committing suicide, which we know he was prone to begin with, or whatever else happens, you've got to be asking questions. If you're not asking questions, you're not a reporter, you're not a curious person, etc. If you're the type of person who says, well, if one government official said it, it must be true. Yeah. Okay, well, reporting is definitely the wrong profession for you. And again, though, do not jump to conclusions, because we have no earthly idea what happened in that cell. And remember, he just tried to commit suicide 3 weeks ago, so it's not a crazy scenario that he committed suicide.
Yeah, and look, there have been a number of people on the news that have been sort of like, oh, maybe a little investigation, find out something. And some politicians similarly have sort of like, it seems a little bit weird. Like that same day, AOC was like, we demand answers. Like super clear, there's gonna be an investigation, we need to know what happened. This is, even if everything that they say is true, this is justice has been ripped away from so many people who've been fighting so hard for it for a long time. It's not the end of all the legal actions or anything like that. There's gonna be civil actions and a variety of different things, but he cannot be questioned. He can't speak at trial, all of that.
Yeah, so, and last thing, whether it's some sort of plot or, like I said, epic, record-breaking incompetence, the fact that they should have seen this coming is already overwhelmingly obvious, but in case it wasn't so, I'm gonna go to a couple of tweets here from one of our hosts, Hassan Piker. So graphics 9 and 10 here. This is what he tweeted not after the death, but several weeks before. This was on July 25th. He wrote, so we're all in agreement that we think someone's gonna kill Epstein before he gives up names, right? And lo and behold, Epstein's dead. Now, before I go to the second one, now, if a talk show host can figure out that this is a significant possibility, you would hope that the people holding him might think it's a significant possibility. And instead of taking every action to make it more likely, you would hope that they would take every action to make it less likely. If we could figure out that this could be a potential problem, again, if they couldn't figure it out and they did everything in reverse to make it more likely rather than less likely, I use the phrase literally, historic incompetence, because it will ring throughout history. This is not a small case.
Yeah, it was so obvious. First of all, that he could not be given bail because he would obviously flee. And then the second he was put into jail, like this was the most obvious thing coming ever. Like after his initial, when he was attacked, we got the video we can go to if you want to, but Emma joined me on the damage report, and we talked about it in a way that it was like a joke that they weren't taking it seriously. Like obviously this is the highest profile prisoner. He's the most people from all across the spectrum that have an incentive in him not standing trial. Like the idea that they would not do everything that's necessary to be watching him at all times is absurd. It was laughable 3 weeks ago.
In fact, that leads me to Hassan's last tweet. This is also a couple of weeks before the death. It was also on July 25th. If you don't know, Hassan's the host of Breakdown and a new show on the TYT network, Agitprop. Check it out on tyt.com/agitprop. But that's a whole different matter. But in this case, he said, any prison that doesn't put Epstein under 24/7 surveillance and solitary confinement right now is also responsible for him getting assassinated. Now, even if you don't think he got assassinated, weeks ago, and I retweeted these over the weekend, most common comment was like, come on, dude, we all knew that. So I'm not putting it out there as like Hassan's a genius, we at the Young Turks are geniuses, that's relatively true. But in this case, everybody knew. What are you doing? Yeah. Of course you have to have him on a 24/7. You're telling me that you run a prison where you've got a guy who might implicate a current president and a former president in a child sex ring, and you don't have him under 24/7 surveillance? That's unbelievable.
That's why, to some extent, I get the privacy concerns, but that's why I sort of disagree about not having the camera actually in the cell. I mean, obviously there's privacy concerns, I understand that, but it doesn't seem like there was anyone at greater risk at that point of dying in jail, whether of his own hand or not, than him in that period of time.
Yeah, look, I would never want cells, video cameras in cells or anywhere private like that, with the possible exception of Jeffrey Epstein, right? I mean, if ever there was a guy you had to keep 24-hour watch on, it was this guy, and he's the one guy that shows up dead. So, man, if it was just incompetence, heads are gonna roll anyway. If they don't, I mean, guess
they're not going to.
That's crazy. How could someone?
There's gonna be absolutely nothing.
No, under the most benign explanation, people must be fired over incompetence.
Okay, well, there has to be an investigation. We'll get Acosta to do it. He'll look into it and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, if they cover it up right away and there's no consequences, that is even more questionable. Because if no one gets fired over it, wait a minute, you thought that went perfectly well?
Well, William Barr's in charge.
Yeah.
Why would he investigate?
No, but that's my point. If they don't, like if there's actual incompetence and he committed suicide because they bungled it, they would obviously fire someone, right? If they don't fire someone, that makes it less likely that it was incompetence and less likely that it was a suicide, because you wouldn't fire the guy who you worked with, because then he'll tell people that you guys did it together, right? You would protect the guy who did it if it was a plot, right? If it's not a plot, you'd be like, what were you thinking? Not guarding this guy, you're obviously fired. You see what I'm saying? So if no one's fired, that's not a good sign. So we don't know yet, we'll find out. But look, guys, there's a lot of amazing things that have happened in this Trump administration. But this one will go down in the history books. People will be talking about how Epstein died for the rest of your life. It'll be 20, 30 years from now, and somebody will bring up this case, whether it's a conspiracy or not a conspiracy or whatever happened. But this will not go away. This is a perfect storm to launch 1,000 conspiracies, one of which might be true.
I wonder who's gonna play him in the movie. Paul Rudd could do the 90s for him. Anyway.
Okay, all right, we gotta take a break?
Yeah.
All right, we got a lot more coming up when we return.
Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
Oh, thank you for the darkness. The darkness makes my light shine brighter. Thank you very much. So lame and so old and tired. As old and tired as white supremacy is, but hey, whatever.
I used to be a very conservative person, and listening to TYT, changed my heart because their arguments made sense. If you listen to the argument and make a compelling case and try and listen to what they say, man, it'll change your world too.
TYT is important to me because I know it is a news show that I can trust.
Not only do they give you the facts, but they are upfront and real about their opinions and their quote-unquote bias. I mean, they say we're progressive, we're a liberal, and this is what we think about things.
TYT chooses to speak the truth, period. And I'm so great to be part of the TYT Army now.
This is about building community. All these people, we're all brothers and sisters, and there's just a great deal of love and respect.
Everyone's like a big family, and not just meeting friends, but seeing Cenk in person and seeing John was amazing. And like everybody's just so friendly here. Thanks for letting me find my political family.
Being able to finally meet people who are also ready and willing to do what it takes to make a difference in this country. If you truly believe in something, you have to do something about it. You can't just sit around and talk.
And it really kind of gave me a little bit of hope, you know, because it's like there's all these people out here who agree with me and want to see money out of politics, Green New Deal, Medicare for all. And it's like, it's just really inspiring.
We are bigger than people realize because a lot of people may not know about TYT, but we are huge and we're growing.
It was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. You know, you're in your bubble, you're in your home, you're living your life, and then, you know, all of a sudden you come out here and you're like, oh, I'm not the only one. You know, and you don't know unless you come. So you gotta come, you gotta get involved, you gotta do something.
I've made new friends, and being in an environment where there's like-minded individuals, it's just exhilarating. And the adrenaline rush that you get from feeling this type of, palpable energy in the room and in the march, it's just amazing.
Apathy, AKA the moderates, cannot drive out apathy. You know, lack of love and indifference. Only conviction, AKA the progressives, can do that. Truth New.
Aaron, which one do you like better? What is this? Or what is this? Go. All right, back on the Young Turks. I mentioned agitprop in the last segment. So I want to let you know that the next episode's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow's a big day at the Young Turks. So at 3:30 Eastern, he's going to be joined by Felix Biederman from Chapo Trap House. So Chapo Trap House in the house. So you can watch the first hour live. It's freely available to everybody, tyt.com/live. The second hour is just for members, and obviously members can see it anytime they want. And in order to sign up through Agitprop, go to tyt.com/agitprop to let us know that that's what made you want to become a member, because that's very relevant to knowing what kind of shows you want to do. You want us to do, and we do this network together, as you all know. Of course, speaking of which, let me just quickly mention that we're going to do a rally in Houston as well. We did one in front of the Miami debates and the Detroit debates, but also Houston. So tyt.com/rally, that's where the next Revolution rally will be. We'll talk about that more later. Now, let me give you guys a couple of comments here. Norris Valkyrie says, both Cenk and John looking sharp today. New haircuts all around, #hot stuff. Agree to disagree, thank you, I appreciate it. But I don't have a new haircut, but John does look good. Okay, so, all right. So
now.
Yes, and it's a very rare time that I don't actually make fun of John. All right, Bernard Bruder writes in, I'm glad I can watch the show live tonight. Greetings from South Africa. Greetings right back at you. And he's a member, and by the way, you don't even have to be a member if you want to watch it live on your app or on your television. You can just beam it in through almost any device that you have. Fire Sticks, Google Chromecast, Roku, Pluto, Zumo.
Ignite the Fire Sticks.
Zoom
Fish
it in.
tubes, whatever you got.
Yes. You know? All right, now to Twitter for a second. Guillotine Wolf says, if you guys don't let John onto Old School tomorrow night, I'll cancel my subscription.
It's really okay.
Yeah, and then he adds, not really though, but maybe.
Ron Pearl Roman's awesome, but I'm also fine going home.
All right, all right. And last one, I rinse in McConnell's neck bag sweat, writes in. According to the right wing, Hillary was so sick and weak she could barely walk before the election. Now she has the strength to break into a prison and kill a man.
Bends the bars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, according to the right wing / Donald Trump, the president of the United States. Okay, anyways.
Ruthless enough to murder Epstein, but not ruthless enough to do what's necessary to win the presidency.
Yeah, what a curious thing to ease up on, right? Like, I'll do anything. I'll kill one of my best friends in the woods. I'll break into a federal prison and kill the guy in front of everybody. Win the election? No, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, the only way they were gonna save his life was if that prison was in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. So let me tell you guys a little bit about Wolfpack. So Wolfpack's doing a film about corruption because obviously our politicians, our representatives, even the good guys are not talking about corruption nearly enough. And it's the reason we don't have federal background checks. It's the reason we don't have any kind of healthcare that covers all Americans. You can go on and on, but even if you're a conservative, there's a ton of things that the government can do, should do, are popular to do that they don't do because all they do is serve their donors. So Wolfpack is an organization that is nonpartisan to get them to get election reform any way possible. And so they're doing a movie about it to let you know, because apparently people think like, oh, well, I guess there's nothing we can do. Like on every other issue, there's something we can do, but on this one, there's nothing we can do. Of course, that's not true. You can pass an amendment, and it seems impossible, but it's actually not. It's very possible. They have a proven way of doing it. And they're gonna show it to you in the movie, but first they gotta finance it. So last we checked in, they were at around, they only need $50,000. This is not a major motion picture, okay? They were at about $33,000. It's wolf-pack.com/film, wolf-pack.com/film. So you get all these great benefits if you want. You can come watch us at the studio here if you give a lot of money, but it'll get the movie done. You'll be a producer on the movie or an executive producer. You can watch it online with me and Professor Larry Lesser from Harvard, etc. But if you just give $10, you get behind the scenes newsletters, photos, and videos. And we want to show you one now to give you a sense of it. Like Mike Mineta is the director of Wolfpack, so he's the one filming. And the other guys, it's not a lot of guys who work at Wolfpack, okay? One of the other few staffers is Josh Aces. And his nickname is Aces, very clever. Anyway, he used to work in construction. He's just a patriotic American who wants to fix things. And same with Mike, okay? None of these guys worked in politics or lobbying or anything like that before. So they shot a little behind the scenes when they're going to visit legislators and getting the movie shot. So let's show you a little piece of it here.
How was the bus ride?
It was a bus ride.
Yeah? How many hours did it take you?
What's going on here? Some behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, say hi to everyone.
Hello. Sorry, I'm a little groggy. Boston traffic.
Yeah, it's a thing, huh?
It is definitely a thing.
All right, so what do you think about the start of this day, Josh, huh?
So we jumped in the wrong lift. Totally went the wrong way.
Did.
And now we got dropped off a couple of streets over because they're doing some construction and we're about to hoof it.
To the camera guy's house.
To the camera guy.
All right, let's do it.
Sponsor here. Twan Gaines is she's awesome. I think she called herself a tiger, right?
She did. Yes.
I would agree.
Oh, look at this, Josh. Emergency use only. We want to call it and say we've got an emergency here. Corruption is.
We got an emergency.
Destroying America.
Congress and what is it? Special interest has a stranglehold on Congress.
All you have to do is pick up that phone, Josh. Go ahead.
I don't know.
No?
Nope. Nope.
He's not going to do it. Oh well. Next interview.
Okay, they're having fun. I love that behind the scenes stuff. Mike, next time, shoot the other way. Anyway, so Ace is the national organizing director. I want to show you some people that they filmed. Argentine Craig, she is a wonderful volunteer and activist in the state of Maryland. And she's working so hard to fix the system, get money out of politics, or whatever election reform that this country is ready for. And they interviewed her. They also interviewed Josh Silver. Josh Silver is the head of Represent Us, another wonderful group working to get money out of politics and fix the corruption in the system. They also interviewed Tawana Gaines. Tawana Gaines is the sponsor of the legislation for Wolfpack in Maryland. She's a Maryland House delegate. They're patriotic Americans, Republicans, Democrats, and everyone in between in all these different states fighting to get the job done. You could help by getting the message out, which is so important, at wolf-pack.com/film. Do that, and you get the chance to watch the movie with us virtually, or maybe even in the studio. So check that out, and I want to thank all the American heroes who are fighting this fight, and obviously all the folks at Wolfpack making this possible, and all of you who donated to it so that it could become a reality. Thank you. All right, what's next, John?
Okay, a lot more news. That's what's next. Virtually since she was sworn in, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has faced an unending stream of abuse, both online and from right-wing media. And that has often, and especially recently, moved into the territory of what is perceived to be threats against her, encouraging violence, pitching her as some sort of extremist that she's not, billboards that are extremely inflammatory. We of course saw the messages from Border Patrol agents that were both violent and sexually violent against her and others in government. And now, today, we've got news of someone who came a step closer to being considered a credible threat against her life. Timothy Ireland, a 41-year-old, was indicted in US District Court in Toledo, which is not where the terror attack happened, Donald Trump, with one count of making interstate threats, one count of being a felon in possession of a firearm, and one count of being a fugitive in possession of a firearm, according to the US Attorney's Office for Northern Ohio. He was quoted as saying, "She should be shot, can't fire me, my employer would load the gun for me." And according to prosecutors on the case, he stated that he made those statements and was very proud of the post he made. He also stated he has firearms and always carries them concealed. That's what he said to the team investigating him after he had been found.
Yes, so they went to his house and they found ammunition, but not a weapon. But to be fair, he is proud that he is good at concealing it.
Yeah, I want to mention it because it's very odd. Capitol Police and ATF, they detained him at the scene at his house and found 7 rounds of ammunition, 3 rounds of .32 caliber ammunition and 4 rounds of .45 caliber ammunition. Who has 7 bullets?
Yeah.
That's not how you buy ammunition, that's bizarre.
And who has those specific kinds of bullets but not the guns to go with them?
So, even though he says he has a gun.
Yeah.
And it's concealed so well that they haven't found it yet.
And you're gonna be shocked to find out that this guy is a felon. He had committed crimes in the past and hence is not allowed to have those weapons. Weird that the mentally unstable guy threatening to kill people had committed crimes in the past. So that is part of the reason why authorities have taken him in. This story made me worry because for the obvious reason. The obvious reason is there's all these folks out there looking to do harm to people, or who at a bare minimum say it cavalierly online, like, oh, it would be great if I could murder a sitting congressperson. But, and by the way, when the authorities call him, the cops are calling you about a murder threat. He doesn't even think he should say he was kidding, even though that would obviously be a lie, given that he actually did say, oh, no, I'm proud of it. I would like to shoot her, right? Like, that's the state we're in, so that's the normal outrage, right? But I get that every day. So I'm beginning to wonder if I'm the crazy one that, like, I've just gotten used to death threats daily. Like, do people not get death threats daily?
No, regular people don't. Yes,
no, I know
stuff has
regular
been
people
normalized
don't.
for you that probably should not be normalized. But yeah, if you're in the public eye, it's much more likely that crazy people are going to take an interest in you. And it's not always positive.
Yeah, I guess given the level of death threats I get, I'm surprised that more legislators are not getting them round the clock. Like that this is a news story.
Well, certain ones do. I mean, we know that Maxine Waters is targeted quite often. I mean, there was the pipe bomb scare, obviously. Now, she has talked about this previously. Now, understand the quotes we're gonna show you, this is from before this most recent issue, it's from earlier this year. But AOC had said about the sort of vitriol and threats that come her way. What people maybe do realize is when organizations air these hateful messages, my life changes because of the flood of death threats they inspire. I've had mornings where I wake up and the first thing I do with my coffee is review photos of the men, it's always men, who want to kill me. I don't even get to see all of them, just the ones that have been flagged as particularly troubling. It happens whenever Fox gets particularly aggressive and hateful too. Young interns have to constantly hear hateful messages, far beyond disagreement, from people we don't even rep. All of this is to say that words matter and can have consequences for safety. For those who believe in free speech, whose free speech do you believe in? Because some folks using free speech to defend racism are also supporting folks passing laws to allow running over protesters. And so she, of course, noticed the pattern between these death threats and the attacks against her on Fox News. Those continue, obviously. She is talked about in apocalyptic terms in right-wing media. She is pitched as a person that's trying to destroy your country, perhaps end your life, bring in murderers and rapists and those sorts of things. And then what do you know of the millions of people that watch those videos? Some percentage take it really seriously. A smaller percentage, wish they could act on it. And a smaller percentage perhaps might try, and that's where thankfully law enforcement has so far stopped any actual issues or any actual progress on that.
Look, I mentioned my case because I don't know how to get control over it. I don't mean for me personally, I mean overall as a society. I mean, there's the one part, AOC gets real death threats, Ilhan Omar gets real death threats nonstop, right? Every once in a while a Republican will go, you know what? Someone called up my office and was mean to me. No, dude, that's not a threat. Okay, that's if they were mean to you by saying I'm going to kill you, then that's a death threat, and you should definitely report it to the cops, et cetera, et cetera. But like, apparently they've got this bubble around them where they never even get criticized. So when they get criticized, they're like shell shocked. For the Just Democrats, it's been 24/7, right? For all these young legislators that came in looking to upend the system and bring democracy back, no matter where the source is, but it's almost always the right wing. It's nonstop threats. But at least they're Congress people, and I don't mean to, it should be taken super seriously, and I like that they have files of the guys. That looks like law enforcement is doing a great job of at least doing their best to try to protect them. But if you're in the online world, good luck to you. There ain't no FBI and cops working 24/7. Look, Cesar Sayoc, the pipe bomber, did a threat against one of our hosts, Francis Maxwell. No protection. So, we're doing our best here, but what I'm telling you is this is madness, and it is definitely going to lead to a very, very bad result at some point.
Yeah.
And then everybody's gonna say afterwards, no one could have seen it coming. I'm telling you, first of all, it's super easy to see coming. Look on my Twitter handle, any day you could find a death threat, every single day, okay? Let alone the thousands of comments on YouTube and Facebook.
Oh God.
Where there are probably dozens. Look, the other day I did it on a whim. I was like, here, I'll scroll through for a second. Boom, found a guy who said, oh, I want to hang you until your neck snaps and you're dead, and etc. Retweeted it casually because it's every day. What am I gonna do, right? So I hope to God it's not anybody, but there's, to John's point, everyone is armed. There's a certain percentage that are mentally unbalanced. There's a certain percentage of that is prone to violence, and that is still a giant number.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and people will assume, what are you worried about? They've got security, Secret Service. No, they really don't. They walk around, they're as vulnerable as anyone. They have less security than your average YouTube star, than a lot of people do. It's a very dangerous situation, and you can't, what I would love is for them to stop demonizing her. They're not gonna do that, of course. We can't get anything out of right-wing media. Like after the El Paso shooting, so I posted a video as a challenge to one pundit in particular who likes to pitch herself as a reasonable person, Tommy Lauren. Stop saying it's an invasion. You can see that terrorists are saying the same thing as you, maybe just don't say that. No, nothing. They're still incredibly defensive about the fact that New York Times today linked a lot of the language that you see on Fox News and Breitbart and things like that to the same language in the manifestos. They won't even change the particular words they use around it. Like the idea that the Five isn't gonna make every show about AOC and Fox and Friends are gonna attack her on every episode, even though they can see that we are getting closer and closer to someone making an actual attempt on the life of a particular congressperson. But they either don't take it seriously or they don't care if something happens.
Yeah, last thing on this, guys. Aggressively criticizing politicians is awesome. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and we do it every single day. But the language that you use, to John's point, is so important, Because, for example, if you're going to use it about a Jewish congressman or senator, you might love them, you might hate them. If you do hate them or you don't agree with their policies, if you say they stabbed us in the back, don't do that. You might think that, hey, look, it's because they voted with the Republicans, etc. No, you have to be careful about that stuff because that has a history. And then what it does is it triggers people to violent action, right? Saying that somebody is an enemy of the people, it's an obvious violent trigger that has been used in the past to trigger people into violence, etc. And so when you know that history and you press that button anyway, repeatedly, well, then you're not being careful, you're being the exact opposite. You're almost egging people on. Yeah. And talking about how immigrants are invaders is a neon light blinking, do violence, do violence. This is what has led to violence almost every single time. And in fact, both Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson have said the immigrants will not replace us. That is classic fascist talk. And that is meant to trigger violence. If they don't know that, they're incredibly stupid and have no chance. And none of their producers know because it's on a teleprompter. No executive Fox News knows that. No producers at Fox News know that. And none of the hosts know that. No, I'm afraid that some of them do know that. And they write that anyway, not just to say, hey, I don't agree with their immigration policy, but to add the line that is implied. And someone should do something about it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's dangerous times. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was two cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all three cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the third car, okay? And I got stuck, I didn't know how to get out. Like, I went, okay, for this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, A, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know. Wow, there's a B? Yeah, I'm like, I hit 3 cars, I don't know. So you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so one, my bad, really sorry about that. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown. Was that good, guys?
Okay, not enough hashtag use. Hashtag abs, hashtag model, hashtag woke bay.
Hashtag one black friend.
I'm thinking more rings.
I got him here.
You need more accessories, way more accessories.
I don't know where to put it.
Come on, throw these on. Woke bay, not sleep bay.
More sexy too.
When's the last time you posted on Instagram? Too long. Come on, man. No, you need to post at least once an hour. What's the outfit of the day today? Is this what you're going with? No. We need more accessories. We need.
This doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't.
For your gay audience, man.
Yeah, the gays love you, man.
Okay. What else? What else do I need to do?
You haven't appropriated a culture in a week.
We have like a kimono or something.
Damn, that looks good on you, dude.
Perfect. How many rings you got on? Do we have any more?
I got 3 more.
Yeah, can we get more rings on this?
And when you're done, kiss the ring. Look at the camera. Kiss the ring. Maybe like a little wink.
Islam's role in terrorism and all the Huffington Post articles weren't doing well. I wasn't.
How many likes did our last outfit of the day picture have?
Only like 100,000.
So I think that's where your focus needs to be. I hear you on all the blah, blah, blah social issue. We need to focus on followers.
Kids in Yemen.
We don't care if you sleep at night.
Dab, mother. Dab.
Okay, I'll dab.
There you go. There you go.
More.
Talk about yourself more.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, be more into it.
Instagram is important for me. Americans losing access to healthcare coverage.
I hear you. Attack Tommy more.
I've done it so many. She shoots out of her living room now. It's like punching down now.
We're okay with that. But it helps the brand.
We made you. We got you verified.
You're nothing
come
without
on.
us.
So I don't know what else I need to do here.
Dude, just take off that shirt.
That's exactly why Tommy Lauren is stupid. I hate you. I'm Hassan Piker. Follow me on Instagram.
#WokeBay.
#WokeBay.
Please follow me.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Shrink the right wing amygdala writes in. Our members have interesting names. Become one, find out. Anyway, you could pretty much do almost any name you want. Anyways, writes in, John gave Clinton third-degree burns with that Wisconsin joke. Like Antonio Brown's feet. That's a football reference that John will totally not understand.
I get that reference.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe it. Okay. No, he doesn't.
Did he have a really good time in the combine or something? No, no, not even close.
Okay, please stop talking. Okay. Please stop. Okay.
I actually like football. I just don't follow it that much.
No, that's apparent. Okay, Joe writes in, finally got around to getting a membership. Hey from Nova Scotia. Well, hey, right back at you, Joe from Nova Scotia. And if you guys want to do the same, tyt.com/join, independent media where we don't just take the government's word for it, we also don't take lunatics' word for it. We actually try to do the best we can at ascertaining the facts. And we are also, of course, home of progressives and proud of our perspective. English teacher in 1984 says, I will never understand this Christian mindset, and she put Christian in quotes, that says, I disagree with you, therefore you should die. Now, to be fair, English teacher in 1984, that is definitely not just a Christian mindset. Unfortunately, the more accurate way of phrasing that is the fundamentalist mindset. So fundamentalist Muslims, Christians, even Buddhists think if you don't agree with me and my religion, it's time to kill you. And if you think the answer to, I think, being challenged on your ideas is to kill someone else, you're probably not on the winning side, right? Yeah. Like if you're so wrong that you think, well, the only shot I got is making sure that guy can't talk anymore by killing them, then your argument is probably the worst argument that anybody's ever heard.
Yeah.
And that's true for all fundamentalists. They're all idiots, zealots, and totally and utterly wrong. So I think that's pretty clear. I've stated my thoughts on that. And then one more thing, guys. So I told you we're a progressive show, obviously, most of you know that. But we also have progressive sponsors, including Aspiration. So that's where you can put your money and get the best rates, free access to ATMs all over the world, FDIC insured, no monthly service fees, and 10% of their money goes to charity, which is unbelievable. And they don't put your money in fossil fuel companies, private prisons, etc. So aspiration.com/TYT. It just takes about 3 minutes to open an account. If you want to throw $10 in there and see how it goes, or $100. And then as Anna did, and she's talked about it on the show before, she's like, I put a little money in, didn't think much about it. And then I looked at it and I'm like, these rates really are incredible, right? And so she started putting more and more, and then she transferred everything she had in there. And she's going around evangelizing to everybody. Like, do you know how you get cash back? Like you get cash, this is crazy. And you have peace of mind. Win-win. Aspiration.com/TYT. All right, John, what's next?
Okay, let's move back to the campaign. Like the rest of the candidates, Joe Biden is in the process of campaigning throughout this primary. But the tough thing about campaigning is that you have to talk a lot, and it's not going very well for him. Very often, frequently, over the past week or so, he's said things and hasn't really said what he meant to say, or got a little bit confused about timelines. And so we're gonna talk about that here. We wanna show you the most recent instance of this though, and it had to do with the movement spawned by the Parkland mass shooting.
I watched what happened when the kids from Parkland marched up to, and I met with them, and then they went off to up on the hill when I was vice president. They went off the hill to go into those neighborhoods.
So, as many people, of course, pointed out, he wasn't vice president when that particular attack happened or when the movement happened. So, of course, he wasn't vice president to talk with them. An official with his campaign says that he was thinking of the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School when he misspoke. That attack, in which 20 children between 6 and 7 years old were killed, along with 6 staff members, was in December 2012. So he would have been vice president at that time.
Well, so first of all, when I saw it, I was like, not in the category of gaffe. So let's talk about the different kinds of things that a candidate can say wrong and put them into categories so we have clarity. So when Biden says we're going to support truth over facts, clear gaffe. That doesn't make any sense. He just misspoke, right?
It's a George Bushism.
Yes, and so that's I think fairly clear and obvious. When he says poor kids can be just as smart as white kids, well, that might go to state of mind. So I would have that in a different category, right? Yes, you blurted that out by accident and he immediately fixed it, but why was that even in your head? So that's a slight, and this one is a third category where I'm worried about you, right? You were not vice president during Parkland. That's a really weird thing to say. And then nice job by your spokespeople of trying to cover for it by saying, oh, he was thinking of Sandy Hook when he was vice president. Well, that makes sense. And that seems like a pretty good excuse, and maybe it's true. Until you watch the video, which you just watched. He talked about the marches. The marches were definitely the Parkland kids.
Yeah.
So I'm worried about him.
So yeah, I mean, this is a tough one because I have to understand going into analyzing a story like this that I am not a Joe Biden supporter, and so I'm inclined to be more critical of him than I am of some other candidates, and so we think that he really imagined a time in which those marches happened and they came up and him and Obama were standing there. If that is true, that is not a small problem.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty significant one.
Well, I actually think that we're relatively unbiased about this. I don't support Joe Biden for winning the Democratic nomination. I'm super clear about that. But on the other hand, we're certainly not in any way, shape, or form right-wingers. And so I thought Hillary Clinton was definitely the wrong candidate. But when people were saying that she was having aneurysms, like, no, she's not. You're making that up. And of course, I was right about that. By the way, some people still haven't let that go on the right or the left, right?
It's been years.
It's been, when is the aneurysm coming? Okay, but so, no, I would like to think that we're super fair about the facts. I might not love Joe Biden's conservative opinions within the Democratic Party, but whether he has got a mental state that's sound or not it has nothing to do with policy. So along those lines, Donald Trump then tweets, Joe Biden just said, now referring to another gaffe, we believe in facts, not truth. Does anybody really believe he's mentally fit to be president? We are playing in a very big and complicated world. Joe doesn't have a clue. To which I would say, are you kidding? Okay.
Dude, sit this one out, man.
Right, like just let it go, let it go. What you're doing is drawing attention to yourself. So this is if what they say about Biden is true, it's gonna be a battle of dotards, right? Like, Trump is the most mentally unfit person to ever serve in any public office in America, let alone president. You're talking about the world is complicated. You're the idiot who came out and said nobody knew healthcare was this complicated. Everyone knew that except you, dotard, right? And then also with North Korea, like, oh, North Korea, nobody knew North Korea was, but that's okay, I could solve it. By the time I see him in 1 second, I can figure it out. Sit it out, dude, sit it out.
Can I add a few really quick?
Yes.
I mean, the Tim Apple thing, he called him by his company over and over. He's done that with other people. He tweeted Kofefe, we've seen him after getting off a plane, he has no idea where the limo is. There's nothing around, there's just the limo, he can't find it. His brain is melting out of his ears and he's criticizing Joe Biden. Now that does not mean that Joe Biden doesn't have a problem, but there is only one person who should not be criticizing Joe Biden, and it's the president.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep beating him up. So let alone the oranges of this story. Okay,
it's true.
He said oranges instead of origins like 4 times. And what's amazing is, in the midst of that, he once said origins. So he knows the word origins.
Well, one more.
Yeah.
He was at a big meeting. The video cameras are rolling. He's like, I think it was Rudy Giuliani. I forget, it might have been Lindsey Graham, but he says, this person, Rudy Giuliani's been doing a great job. He's wonderful. Where is he? Where is he? He was directly across from him and he couldn't find him.
Yeah, I like that whenever any host on this network has a question of fact, they don't look to me. They always look to the stage manager. Like, well, he might know. I mean, Jack's not gonna know, but he might know. To be fair,
we don't trust the government, we don't trust each other.
Yeah, to be fair, we have the smartest stage managers in the business by a long shot. But anyways, another one that's just fun, it wasn't as big a deal, was, have you ever seen him leave the umbrella behind? Like, when he's getting into Air Force One, he's like, what do I do with this thing? I can't bring, I don't know, just leaves it.
Okay, you know why though? Because he has regressed to a pre-infant stage. He doesn't have object permanence. He thinks that when he stops holding it, it's gone from the universe.
I'm a very stable genius.
Yeah, who says that? Who says that? All right, anyway, last one. He thinks wind causes cancer. No one should ever let that go. On that statement alone, he should be impeached. We have a lunatic for a president, totally mentally unfit to be president. Anyway, so with that in mind, back to Biden, why would we put up the guy most similar to Trump against Trump? We're supposed to be going the opposite direction. Trump is polling in the 30s, but yet maniacally, the mainstream media and the Democratic Party insist, oh no, in order to fight Trump, we have to get the guy that is most similar to Trump. Yeah. What? That makes no logical sense. No, John, you guys don't understand. We have to get a guy who is the most similar to the candidate that Trump was up against last time, an establishment Democrat with a long history of working with corporations and big businesses and big donors. Why? The last one lost to Donald Trump. The last establishment Democrat lost to a dotard. And she was actually totally fine mentally. She was incredibly smart, just didn't have the right policies. So Biden, on the other hand, is at best case scenario with the gaffe after gaffe. In a bad case scenario, it's worse than gaffes. We can do, you're talking about we gotta go with Biden so we don't risk losing. What? That makes no sense. We can't go with Biden because we don't want to risk losing. But through all this, I'm desperate to be fair to all the candidates, including Biden. And look, there's still a part of me that likes Biden from the old days. I love his speeches when he leans in, goes, no, this isn't about politics. This is serious, I'm not joking. I love when he does stuff like that. But when he says Parkland and talked about the marches, and I'm worried about him, man. And if he's our candidate, then I'm worried about all of us. But even if you put the politics aside, that's not normal.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Agreed.
We're out of time. Okay, for the first hour, we got a great second hour coming up for you guys. And of course, it turns out that the Trump administration is against all immigrants, not just undocumented immigrants. Yes.
I just want to say we were going to talk about the Endangered Species Act changes. It will be discussed tomorrow morning on the damage report, so feel free to tune in. On tomorrow's episode, I'll break it down there.
This is recently it was the 5th anniversary of Michael Brown's death. The right wing and cops have found an obnoxious way to celebrate. I will counter that, which will lead to more death threats. Okay, so that's in the second hour. So come back and check that out.
Windmills, wing.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
This is the wildest, craziest motherfucking race I've ever seen. What are we gonna do? Not make brackets? Let us whisper victory. Wait a minute! All of a sudden, here comes Bernie! Good night and good luck, everybody. These are the two most unpopular candidates we have ever had in our nation's history.
Jesus Christ, there is significant boos every time Hillary Clinton's name is mentioned.
Everyone I know is voting for her out of fear. He was looking at Donald Trump's hair like it was cotton candy.
That's right. Get him out.
Get him out.
It's political game. They don't care about lives.
Bow your head. This is what we mean by the establishment press.
Do you trust the establishment media?
Yeah, no.
We have a good time on this show. What else are you gonna watch?
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Yes, President Donald Trump has made life hell. Everything is always about race because the sitting president, known for his trigger Twitter fingers, somehow kept it tight-lipped over the Nazis who returned to Charlottesville last week.
If Republican politicians genuinely cared about all lives, we wouldn't be facing the largest wealth redistribution in American history.
Trump, who claims he wants to make America great again, but isn't really interested in protecting the little guy, just withdrew Obama's memo and told collectors that they're free to go back to screwing over struggling Americans with fees.
This decision will impact far and wide, especially, and listen for the irony here, those who already pay more out of pocket each year due to soaring internet package prices.
There's a ton of racist monuments in America. White supremacy is still put up on a pedestal.
Of course, more white people are killed by police. White people make up more than 75% of the US population.
So you can justify your bigotry and feel better about saying these things at dinner, polite dinner conversation with a side of racism and home fries.
Does the president normally watch these kind of anti-Muslim videos that have been posted by this group?
Here's a list of what the president watches every day. It goes cartoons, Fox and Friends cartoons, followed by, at noon, it was a bunch of Civil War documentaries for like 6 hours. But he claps at all the wrong times.
All right, back on Young Turks, Brooke Thomas, Francis Maxwell joins us. Great to see you guys. Got a lot of stories for you. As usual, let me quickly do your comments and a couple of notes and corrections. First of all, I forgot to mention Charlie Cooper, who is co-founder or founder of Get Money Out of Maryland, who's was also interviewed in the Wolfpack movie and is just a wonderful, wonderful activist. And I want to make sure that I gave him a shout out too. And I just checked wolf-pack.com/film. And it's at 34,602 now. So can we see 50,000 make that happen? Thank you guys for participating in that. And I mentioned Agitprop is 2 hours. One is 1 hour is public and 1 hour is just for members. It's not, both hours are not being taped tomorrow. Just the 1 hour with Chapo Trap House is taped tomorrow, but that's also live for everyone, including non-members. Make sure you check that out at 3:30 Eastern tomorrow, right here on tyt.com/live. The one for just members will be taped on Friday, just so you guys know. All right, let me go to Twitter. Dominic Franco says, I was so excited that John might have gotten a football reference. and then was immediately crushed right afterwards. So close yet so far. Actually, not that close. He was just making stuff up. Okay, and Hangry Skywalker with a tweet I love, saying, "Enjoying my birthday, having whiskey and a steak. Opened up an aspiration account, supporting hashtag TYT Live and watching a cheesy 90s movie when the show's over. In my 34 years, I learned one real truth. We need independent media. Please support." Thank you, Hangry. I appreciate it. And it's, by the way, sounds like an awesome birthday, and happy birthday to you too. Whiskey and steak and watching TYT and cheesy 90s movies. I don't see how it could get better. Okay. And last two here. Now from our members section, tyt.com/join to become a member. Stiff Upper Lip says, Biden will be out of the race by New Year's Day. Mark the tape. Okay, JR, we're marking the tape. It's a somewhat bold prediction, but I think there's a very good chance you're right. And then finally, COJ, likely C, writes in, TYT, in Craig we trust. Now
I love that.
What a legend.
Yes, now that's true, but today it happens to be Skip. So sometimes it's Edwin, sometimes it's Craig, that are our stage manners that know everything, but today it's Skip and sometimes it's Jacory, and all four of them know everything on the planet. All right, and maybe I'll talk to Jacory in the post game about my basketball game. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. Last half hour is just for the members, and we have a lot of fun. I'll show you some tape actually for my vacation in Hawaii too. Brett will join us. So tyt.com/join. All right.
That's awesome.
What's next, Brooke?
All right, well, let's get started here. The Trump administration is actually making it harder for legal immigrants to get permanent legal status. Legal immigrants to get permanent legal status in the US if they rely on food stamps or subsidized housing. The move will have the greatest impact on immigrants who are living in the country legally and are likely to receive government benefits, making it much harder for people who are struggling financially to win legal permanent status, commonly known as a green card, so they can remain in the United States. This is the latest policy, of course, by the Trump administration, hoping to restrict immigration. The director of US Citizenship and Immigration Services says this will allow the government to insist that immigrants who come to the country were self-sufficient and would not be a drain on society. And one more time, just so it's clear, this new rule would alter how the government decides if someone is a public charge, allowing officials to deny green cards to those who have used or will likely use the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, commonly known as SNAP, food stamps, Section 8 housing vouchers and assistance, public housing, or most forms of Medicaid. And of course, Donald Trump himself has been extremely open on his thoughts on this. Take a look at this.
Priority will also be given to higher wage workers, ensuring we never undercut American labor. To protect benefits for American citizens, immigrants must be financially self-sufficient.
Yeah, if we had had that standard, we'd have almost no one in the country. So we certainly wouldn't have any Irish in the country. They were running from a famine. You know who's not rich when they get here? People running from a famine. Okay, we wouldn't have any Irish, we wouldn't have any Italians, we wouldn't have any Jews, let alone the Chinese, let alone African Americans.
Well, we'd still be here because.
Yes, but certainly we're not brought here because of the wealth that associated with you guys. And of course, Statue of Liberty has this quote. Everybody used to be familiar with it, but they've kind of buried it. So look, there's a couple of problems here. One is, I thought you guys were against undocumented immigrants. No, they're against all immigrants. Second is talking about, they're basically not worthy of coming here if you're not rich. So that's why I wanted to make sure that you guys did know the quote on the Statue of Liberty, where we receive immigrants historically. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. It's not unclear about the homeless, the wretched refuse, the tired, the poor, the huddled masses. And now Trump says, give me your millionaires and billionaires and corporate executives yearning for tax shelters, and we will bring them here. But everybody else, you're not welcome. And if if you can't at least agree with our core principles, you might be a little un-American.
Can I say two more things? I just wanted to point out two more things. So more than 4 million non-citizens, were in families that received SNAP benefits between 2014 and 2016. I just have two quotes that I thought were really important. One is from Sarah Pierce. She's an analyst at the Migration Policy Institute, saying it will likely shift immigration away from Latin America and towards Europe, while disproportionately disadvantaging women, children, and the elderly. Marilena Hincapi is an executive director of the National Immigration Law Center. She said it'll have dire humanitarian impact, forcing some families to forego critical life-saving healthcare and nutrition, and the damage will be felt for decades to come. So this doesn't stop people from coming, it just stops people from asking for help when they need it.
Yeah, but it was always gonna be set up with this idea. I mean, first of all, it was like, oh, we're gonna target illegals, right? That was what they would always preface it by saying, and then you'd always see that ICE would end up detaining legal citizens and then say, oh, we didn't know, we were just doing a thorough check. It was kind of set up for the same purpose, which is to try and force this sense of we're tackling down on immigration, but sooner or later we're gonna end up coming for every and any immigrant who happens to not fall into our idea, by ours I mean Trump's idea of America. But it goes back to the concept of what I thought was supposed to be the bedrock of America, of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and working hard and making the American dream happen. And these benefits are put in place to basically help anyone who wants to obtain that. So by saying, oh no, if you use any of those, or you, not even if you have used them, but you might use them based on your English proficiency or your age or your family, well, we might deny you the chance to even try and do that before you can even come. So, and it reminds me of one of the best interviews, which everyone in their lifetime should check out, Martin Luther King, not the quotes that conservatives like to take on MLK Day and pretend they actually familiarize themselves with, but when he talks about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and the kind of racist tendencies that go along with that. This is a Martin Luther King that conservatives don't want to highlight because he was very radical in when he called out, basically calling out white privilege and the way that that testament was only offered to certain groups of immigrants, specifically the Irish and the Europeans, who would actually be given land so that they could become proficient and they could get themselves wealthy. But more often than not, people of color, especially black and brown folk in America, they weren't given that privilege. They weren't even allowed the opportunities to try and raise themselves up from the bedrock which a lot of Americans had put them into. So it just goes along with that sentiment, is like, so you're not only lying when you're selling this idea of the American dream, but you're not even gonna let anyone have the opportunity to try and get it.
Yeah, so there's layers of what's wrong with this policy. So first of all, saying, if we think you might one day require public assistance, what?
Right.
What is this, a thought crime?
What's that gonna be based on?
Right, and like, hey, we think one day you might be poor, so we're gonna kick your ass preemptively now and deny you certain rights. That's insanity, right? And by the way, if you're a Republican voter, are you all fabulously wealthy already? I mean, look, first they said it was undocumented immigrants, now it's all immigrants, including green card holders, which is another layer I'm gonna get to. You sure they're not gonna come for you next? By the way, they're already coming for you. Now they're doing drug tests, they're doing everything they can to deny you Medicaid, if you're poor, food stamps for your kids, if they're hungry, etc., right? So in terms of the green cards, that used to be that once you got a green card, you're perfectly legal here as a resident. The only thing you couldn't do was vote, but otherwise you had all the privileges of full-blown resident in America. Now, no, they were lying. They hate all immigrants. So unless they're married to Donald Trump or in that family. So now they're chipping away at all the rights the green card holders have. So how could it make a difference? I mean, look, Steve O has told the story before. He's sometimes appears on air here and he's an employee here. And his parents came incredibly poor from Korea. With the help of other family, et cetera, they were able to get a toehold into a 7-Eleven that they ran, et cetera. But before they got to 7-Eleven, they were dirt poor, so they needed assistance. So they got food stamps because they were hungry. And lo and behold, they worked really hard. It's the American dream, right? Wound up owning that 7-Eleven, wound up helping others own 7-Elevens, right? And wound up sending their kids to really great schools, and they would have done well if they weren't working at the Young Turks. So, that was supposed to be what Republicans stood for. I remember because I was a Republican back then when I was younger, and I my family lived the American dream. A lot of my friends lived the American dream. We were told what now it turns out was a lie. Yeah. And it's not that I actually am still patriotic. I don't believe the American dream is a lie. I think it's awfully difficult and way harder today than it ever was. Well, depending on who you are. But, but having said that, the Republicans, it turns out, never meant it. They never believed in the American dream. And this whole bootstrap stuff is nonsense. They actually want to make sure that you have as difficult a time as possible if you're from the wrong place and you look different than them.
Well, I like that you brought that up, and it also contradicts what you always hear from conservatives, where they say, well, why are they even flooding our border? Just come the legal way. And then now they're saying, oh, you can come the legal way, but we're actually going to put more restrictions on it, so it makes it even more difficult. And for anyone, and I'm speaking on behalf of people who have actually went through the process, I know, as you mentioned there, and I want to highlight it straight away, the process for me has been a lot easier because of I've had family be able to support, company support of going through the process, but it is not cheap, right? So to break it down, if you're actually looking for ways to try to, in a way, discourage people from trying to get a green card on its own, it costs a substantial amount of money just to even try to get into the process, to even get into the interview stage. So you're talking about, if you're talking about family-based, at least $4,000, including lawyer fees, and then if you're looking to try and go through, you've got biometrics, you've got so many fees added on to that. So you're actually going to be out of pocket before you've even got into the position to try to become a legal citizen. And then they're trying to say, oh, you can spend all that money trying to come here, but you know what? You might not even give you it because you might one day need to rely on the government to help you after you've pumped all this money into trying to become a citizen. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and very last thing here, guys, is that we had a system that was okay, it wasn't great. We, and a lot of Democrats also believed in deportations even before Trump, et cetera. But the one thing that we were all theoretically in favor of until the Trump years was, well, look, America is built on immigrants. That's an absolute fact, and no one could dispute that. So we all were in favor of legal immigration, getting in line, as Francis did, as I did, et cetera. And the Republicans said that most of all, they shouted it from the rooftops. Now, not only do they do this, they're against what they're calling chain migration. Chain migration just means family members. That is the predominant legal way of entering the country. The #1 way to become a legal immigrant, not an illegal, not an undocumented, but a legal immigrant. And now the Trump Republicans have said, yep, we were lying the whole time. We never even believed in that. We don't think families should come here. So there's no end to their hypocrisy. And sometimes people ask me, why'd you leave the Republican Party? Well, if you find out everything they were saying is a lie and you stayed, what's wrong with you? The question isn't why I left. The question is, why hasn't everybody left the Republican Party?
We know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
Yes.
I think we're taking a break.
All right, we'll be right back.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat. We thugged out.
What's J&A?
Ja'Cory and Arthur.
You guys share a mug?
Yeah, you both take our hot cocoa black.
That doesn't make any sense.
Plus, I'm right-handed and Arthur's left-handed, so our lips wouldn't even touch the same area. It's perfect.
No, I'm not left-handed.
What do you mean? I've seen you type with your left hand.
Yeah, and also with my right hand. That's how typing works.
Hi, I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing. But what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate backed money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats who are gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free healthcare for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Just Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a betting. Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you. And someone sent me a message on Snapchat, but now I can't find it. What do I do? Go. All right, back on the Young Turks.
I was dancing.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was for you, Brett.
That was a very Tarantino-like intro.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah. You got into it a little bit.
Yeah. So speaking of into it, we hope you're into the rally we're going to do in Houston. That's going to be on September 12th. That's when the debates are. Sign up, basically RSVP at tyt.com/rally. And we'll see you in Houston. And we'll get you more information because once you sign up there, then we give you updates on where exactly it's going to be and when it's going to be. And then Wolfpack, last we checked in, was around 33,000. Wrong. Wolf-pack.com/film, now at $34,763. So keep it going. 50,000 and that's it. We're done with it. So we're about 69% of the way there. Let's keep going. Wolf-pack.com/film. And then I want to tell you about one of our sponsors, that's Squarespace. And if you're building a website, then use them. If you're not building a website, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, but if you are, get the 10% off, squarespace.com/TYT. They're the best in the business. So might as well get a discount while using the best. Okay, go to your comments. Cognosco this in the member section says immigrants are more likely to vote Democratic once they become citizens. Very clear what Trump and the Republicans are after. Yes, that's part of their agenda and not the right way you should do a democracy. Okay, on Twitter, the Stone Buddha says, a panel with 2 immigrants and Brooke. This is seriously a panel that totally triggers conservatives. Definitely helping me get through being broke down in the desert. Okay, well, good luck with that, Stone. Yeah. Bill Beasley writes in, the 1% have stolen half the wealth by rigging the game in their favor. I want to shout, look squirrel, to distract everyone by blaming immigrants with nothing. 1,000,000,000%, right? Exactly the agenda they have. And lastly, Tom Zawacki says, I read today that a person making $50,000 a year pays $36 towards social welfare benefits and $905 towards big oil subsidies. If you want to cut the ropes on the safety nets, how about cutting the welfare to the rich first? So I don't know about those specific numbers, but the oil subsidies are gigantic. And so is every other kind of subsidy. In a 5-year period for just the top 200 corporations, it was $4.4 trillion in subsidies. You cut those first, then we could have a conversation about food stamps.
Yeah.
All right, Brooke, what's next?
This story is wild. So there's a lot of information, but essentially a US citizen with no medical training set up a medical clinic in Uganda and is now being accused of killing 119 African children. From 2010 through 2015, Renee Bach says she took in 940 severely malnourished children and 105 of them died. Just a little backstory here. She was 19 years old when she decided to set up her own charity in Uganda. She says she had lay medical training, a CPR certificate, and her high school diploma via homeschooling. In 2011, she hired 3 Ugandan nurses to help out during the day and stocked a room she dubbed the clinic with medical gear, such as oxygen tanks, IV catheters, and monitoring equipment. But according to one of those nurses, it seemed Bach was handling a lot of the medical care herself. Here is a little bit of what Bach herself wrote in one of her blogs about a 9-month-old baby, a sick 9-month-old baby that was rushed to her clinic. She says, I hooked the baby up to oxygen and got to work, took her temperature, started an IV, checked her blood sugar, tested for malaria, and looked at her HB count. Of course, that's the measure of hemoglobin in the blood. I was attempting to diagnose the many problems that could potentially be at hand. Got it? Malaria, positive, HB 3.2, a big problem, most likely fatal. She needed a blood transfusion and fast. She also later wrote that we performed a blood transfusion, but didn't clarify who we was. And Bach again herself says she serviced more than 900 people, and we're talking about incredibly sick people. It was what shocked most of us. This is what Prima Kwagala, a Ugandan civil rights attorney, said. She said, we couldn't imagine a human being without skill taking into her care people that were almost on their deathbeds. Now, Kwagala is actually now suing Bach on behalf of two mothers who lost their children at this clinic. Her court filings include excerpts from Bach's blog, as well as a blog posted by a supporter of the charity who visited and took pictures, including one of Bach inserting an IV catheter into the vein of a severely malnourished child. She thinks Bach, who by the way is now back home in Virginia, she thinks Bach should be in jail. She says the suit is deeply necessary. These families deserve justice, and there's a larger principle at stake. Imagine if a 20-something Ugandan woman had gone to the US and set up an equivalent arrangement to treat impoverished American children. And before you respond to that, I want to show you, because Fox News actually covered this story, I want to show you the angle they decided to go with.
The mothers allege they were led to believe that Miss Renee Bach was a medical doctor and that her home was a medical facility, as she was often seen wearing a white coat, a stethoscope, and often administered medications to children in her care. The actions of Renee and SHC led to the death of hundreds of children. Renee, that is a serious allegation. How do you respond?
So first off, I have never represented myself as a medical professional or health worker of any type. The organization Serving His Children hires medical professionals that are Ugandan, local and national folks. And I have assisted our medical team in emergency settings and in crisis situations, but I have never practiced medicine, and I have never adorned or put on any sort of a uniform or white coat for that matter.
Just a little more in how Fox News, how they were referring to the people who had a problem with this. Watch this.
The problem with these reputational terrorists on the internet is even finding these people all around the world and putting out information that's not fact-based. And it's very sad when a missionary or humanitarian or any individual from the United States or any developed nation wants to go into a third world or a health crisis somewhere like in Uganda, what Renee and Serving His Children has done. And they come under these attacks with no way to really defend yourself effectively. We believe that it's important that you get good information out. And while they want to talk about these desperately sick children that were tragically lost, they're ignoring the fact that 3,600 children had their lives saved. What Serving His Children did with a medical team there in Uganda and under Renee's leadership was truly remarkable.
Okay. Guys, I want to give a little bit of context here before handing off to Francis, who was recently in Uganda. So first of all, Look, we said killed in terms of the 105 kids, but yes, there's a certain death rate that comes with anyone taking care of kids, especially sick kids or people in general. So the important question is, well, what was the death rate? Was it within norms or was it outside of norms? And in this case, it was way outside of norms. In 2011, the death rate was 20% of the kids that they took care of died. That's
and they shouldn't have been taking care of them. That's the problem.
Yes. In 2012, it was 18%. Experts said if you had any kind of charity with those monstrous rates, it would go all the way up to the head of the organization, the head of like people looking after charities to make sure they're not scams, etc. Going, what is this 20% death rate doing here? This is crazy. And what's interesting is at some point in 2013, she finally hires 2 doctors. Before it was just a couple of nurses that were sometimes there and sometimes not there, okay? And the death rate drops to 10%. Well, it turns out having doctors makes a big difference. Of course it does, right? But unfortunately, not nearly enough precautions were taken. And look, as I started reading the story, I get that she went to go do good in the world and she wanted to help people, so I acknowledge that. But this savior complex leads to taking dangerous risks, and the view of the country that you're in leads to a problem like, well, I got homeschooled and I'm a high schooler, right? But I'll know, whatever little education that I have, I'll know better than their doctors. No. Yeah. If you bring those kids to the hospital, they have doctors in Uganda and they have hospitals in Uganda. They're not incredibly rich in that particular area of Uganda. We all know that, but they have doctors in hospitals and they know how to take care of kids. That doesn't mean that no kid's gonna die because some of them were in bad situations, right? Yeah. But a lot more kids are gonna be saved if you do the right things instead of just blundering in there. Oh, I got this. I'm gonna save Uganda. Right?
That's what happens so often. It's just because of how Africa is viewed. That one would believe that I just graduated high school and I must have, I must be better at saving kids than a doctor, than this black doctor in this African country. Because they're all poor and they all need help and they all need saving. So I must know better because I'm from America, I must know better. And it is costing people's lives. But we see this a lot with a lot of charities.
I mean, they didn't bring up her journals in that Fox News segment there, which they should have, because it gives off that immediate white savior complex where she's talking about this out-of-body experience she had, and this is something I had to do. So it just kind of gives off this vibe that she was definitely continuing to overstep her reach. But as Jake mentioned, when I went to Uganda to do the project with YouTube, we were in an area where Ugandan natives were actually opening their borders to South Sudanese refugees who are fleeing conflict and working together to provide care for both Ugandan natives who are struggling and malnutrition, and also South Sudanese refugees. So, their kindness, their overwhelming gestures to try and help each other was something that moved me beyond belief. But what I also realized is I was so naive. Right, I was also naive coming across from, I would say, an educated background and understanding that these countries and these cultures are different. That doesn't mean I'm going to go in with this idea that I'm going to save and I'm going to suddenly go around and cure these issues that are going on. And as soon as I got there, we were involved in an immediate training camp with the IRC, the International Rescue Committee, and it's echoed here in this article where they're talking about these children, especially, are basically malnourished, and anything you do has a knock-on effect. So even if you're going in and you have this, because what happens is kids come up to you when you're there and they want anything that you can potentially offer them in these poor areas. And it's such a tragic circumstance where people are often in a weird situation where even if you hand over something like a packet of crackers or food, it can have a knock-on effect because you don't understand that these kids, the metabolism isn't working, their immune system isn't working. So you're trained as you come into these areas to be aware that you can't just suddenly take it upon your own idea to go and offer children food or try to cure children or try to, I don't know, have some sort of savior complex where you can help in these areas where they have doctors and they have professionals who are looking at every single case. Because in these children, in these areas, the simplest thing, the simplest infection, the simplest misjudgment can kill them within 48 hours. It can literally kill, this is not This is not a game where you can try to have this trial and error basis to figure out whether God sent you to try and save these children, because your mistake will cost them their lives. So even in this controlled environment where I was, we were still warned straight from the get-go, do not go in here with this idea that you can just hand out food or you can hand out supplies and suddenly it might not kill someone, because it can. And this girl going into this situation, this person who thought she could go in and create this, I don't know, this savior complex of her own, it's costing people's lives. And it is down to this misunderstanding of Africa is a continent where, oh, they don't have much, so I'm gonna go in, and even with my high school education, I know more so than a doctor who's trained to try and take care of people. And this is what happens.
Yeah, well, look, there's another uncomfortable fact here. There's wonderful religious folks who've gone to help the poor from all the different religions for centuries now and have done amazing work and what people would say is God's work. But there's also people who take the religions literally and get into this mindset of, I don't need doctors. We don't need no stinking science or doctors, etc. I got this. Either God's gonna save him or God's not gonna save him. So she called it a clinic when it wasn't a clinic. But here in America, the right-wing Christian fundamentalists do that all the time. They'll lure pregnant women into something they call a clinic that isn't a clinic, that doesn't have any doctors, and they'll lie to them. And they'll say, oh, did you know that if you have an abortion, you'll get cancer, etc. And we all take it, well, it's religious, so we can't touch it, so we're not allowed to criticize it, right? And so once you're, and by the way, our right-wing evangelicals also go to Uganda not to do good things, but to try to pass laws against gay people in Uganda, including the most extreme laws that might cost them their lives. So look, I know that there's a lot of great religious folks, including right-wing evangelical Christians in this country that mean to do well. But you've got to have your stuff straight. You can't just go in there, and some, by the way, that don't mean to do well. But even if you mean to do well, you can't just blunder into a situation and be like, nah, it's okay, I talked to God, and God says I don't need doctors, and I got this, and I'm gonna put on the stethoscope and get to work. Look, I don't know, they have no knowledge. Like, I saw a documentary, I mean, this is such a simple example, but I saw a documentary where sometimes the Holocaust survivors would die immediately after they were rescued because they were starving, and if you gave them just a little too much food, it could kill them, right? See, a doctor knows that, right? And so they would be prepared for these kind of situations. But if you just say, oh, no, I'm gonna save Uganda and go in there, yeah, of course you're gonna cause a mess. And when we say, hey, don't do that, be really careful when you're dealing with malnourished children who are already on a razor's edge, then you have idiots who go on Fox News and say, they're reputational terrorists. Is there anything that Fox News won't call a terrorist? I know that that's their guess.
Well, like white guys.
Yeah, well, yes.
Good point.
Yeah,
but I mean, it starts off like when you read through this article, it's not just the idea of trying to take care and by offering food, which she started off doing, which was trying to offer food to try and help in her idea of what she was trying to do. But then a blood transfusion is what is documented here. It is such a complex procedure that she's just offering because she thought that's what needed to be done.
Right, would you ever put a needle into somebody?
No, you guys are 100% right. That's where this conversation should end. Who in their right mind would try to do a blood transfusion when they're not a doctor? That's crazy. If anyone said to me, hey guys, you think we should do a blood transfusion even though we don't have a doctor? I'd be like, no, no, we shouldn't.
We're gonna make it worse. As bad as it is, we're gonna make it worse.
Yeah, and it just comes down to this idea that all these children are throwaways anyway. So if you don't try, well, we don't know. You miss all the shots you don't take. Like, this is people's lives. This isn't a game that you're just trying to have trial and error process. This isn't a game of operation where suddenly you're gonna pull the wrong thing and it's all right, I'll try something else. The patient that they mentioned here, somehow by a miracle, you wanna talk about God, say that person is still alive. I don't know how, but that person who got the blood transfusion, that young girl, is actually still alive, but many others aren't. They weren't so lucky.
Yeah, because they had to rush her to a hospital
because the nurse came in and said, this is not okay.
Yes, that's right. That's right, exactly right. Thank God, at least the nurse said, no way. They go, and in Uganda, guess what they have in hospitals? Doctors who save people's lives.
Right. All right, let's take a break.
Okay. When we come back, we've got more nonsense, unfortunately. In this case, the story that's got me really exercised is the cops celebrating the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson. So, okay, buckle up, brace for impact on that one. We'll be right back.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse us and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
We get animated about the news. Yes, we're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, guilty, I care.
Senator Sanders, I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to ask you a policy question.
How dare you? That's the problem, you're the problem. Don't ever attack the Republicans. Where the is the liberal media? No, these are all establishment guys. They love the system as it is. They're all enormously rich off the system that exists.
For us, this system isn't working.
So what this campaign is about is trying to create an economy that works not only for the people on top, but works for all Americans.
So what's happening in the Democratic Party is what used to happen in the general election. We would have a person who represented workers and the people and the voters, and then the Republicans would represent business and corporations and Wall Street. That's happening all inside the Democratic Party this time.
We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities, and we're gonna keep it real with them.
He's so progressive, he recycles his thoughts. His car cleans the air. He prosecuted a bank executive and won. His idea of Social Security is old people being able to survive. When he builds a bridge, it bridges the income inequality gap. The only campaign contribution he'll accept is your vote. He's the most progressive man in the world.
Not all Democrats are created equal. Support bold progressives, my friends.
Back in the Young Turks. In the next hour of the Young Turks, I got two great guests for you, including one that's going to talk about how Breitbart has been financially devastated, which is great news.
No.
And then second one about how a very long, detailed, wonderful article about why Nancy Pelosi is not a master legislator. So check that out in the next hour of the Young Turks, or just stay here on TYT.com/live. Well, just time for one comment. Gabby Marita writes in, what? lay medical training.
Right.
That's not a thing. I watched Star Trek a whole bunch, but I don't think that gives me lay astronaut training.
Good point.
Or Starfleet training. All right, Brooke, what's next?
John would have really appreciated that comment.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, a Michigan police officer is on administrative leave right now while city officials investigate why he had a Ku Klux Klan application framed in his home, and also why the whole place was decorated with Confederate flags. I'm always fascinated by why there are Confederate flags in places like Oklahoma, Michigan. I don't know. It's not part of your history, but okay. Here's more info. Muskegon City Manager Frank Peterson was alerted to Officer Charles Anderson's disturbing memorabilia after an African-American man toured the white officer's home, which is for sale, according to the statewide news site MLive. Now, Rob Mathis wrote on Facebook that the 5-bedroom home was littered with Confederate memorabilia. The KKK application was hanging in one of the bedrooms, and it lacks a name and a signature. And we also have found out about this same officer. He actually, 10 years ago, shot and killed a black man although he was cleared of any wrongdoing. Here's his info here. In 2009, the 48-year-old officer killed a 23-year-old man, Julius Johnson, after the man fled on foot after a traffic stop and then allegedly beat the officer in the head. Anderson had been called in as backup, apparently relating to the smell of marijuana.
Oh, so it was serious. Of course. Okay.
He said he shot Johnson because he feared for his life, and the local prosecutor said Anderson was justified in using deadly force.
Of course. When someone is running away from you on foot, that is when your life is really in danger, because they might get away after having hit another officer, which would hurt your feelings. And so probably best time to execute them. It doesn't matter. You're going to be cleared on all charges pretty much every single time in America. So anyway, so that's that case. That was from about a decade ago. In terms of the Klan memorabilia, et cetera, two things I'd like to note. If you're rooting for the Confederacy, you're rooting for traitors, caused more American deaths in battle than any other war, the traitors that you celebrate. That's just a fact. They committed treason and they fought America, they killed Americans. And if you're celebrating the KKK, apparently you love terrorists. The biggest terrorist America has ever seen was the KKK. If you don't agree to that, you're wrong and probably a weirdo racist. So what? Oh, lynchings? No, not terrorism. Burning crosses on people's lawns to terrorize them, not terrorism. Bombing churches and killing little children, not terrorism. Obviously, the biggest terrorist for centuries in America. So it's if you're a cop, celebrating terrorists is a curious thing to do. And finally, look, if there's a professor that has Mein Kampf in their library, likely they're doing it for research and reading it, and people should read it so they know the terrors and can know about the warnings. If there's an African-American professor who has a KKK certificate on his wall, he likely is doing that for historical reasons, research reasons, et cetera. Could it be that it's a non-African-American professor or someone else, et cetera, that has that kind of interest, but on an intellectual level, so that they and you would have to back that up with some context for that person, no matter what their race is, being great on civil rights issues, and then having that as a warning in their house, hey, never forget, et cetera. If you have someone who has not been great on those issues and their house is littered with Confederate and KKK material, well, that's a different story. And if you can't see that that's a problem, that that's a cop going around with a gun and a badge, again, there's something wrong with you.
And in a society that you would hope stands for freedom, liberty, justice for all, they would maybe look into reopening that case, considering that now we see something that is potentially leading to, I don't know, some sort of bias in a situation like that, with someone unarmed running away and being shot and killed. But this is a society where 90% of police officers, when shooting unarmed folk, are let off and never held accountable. So I cover this subject religiously, and issues like this should surprise me, but they don't. Accountability is one of the biggest flaws in basically in law enforcement in the United States, because then it allows people to slip through the cracks. And I know everyone likes to say it's only a few bad apples, but if you never hold bad apples accountable, then they continue to, I don't know, rot the whole department. And you never seem to see any issues like this coming out when people are held accountable. But we see officers like Betty Shelby, who shot and killed Terrence Crutcher, giving classes on how to overcome that really tough situation in her life. We see officers like Timothy Loman, who shot and killed Tamir Rice, being rehired. We see officers like Pantaleo not being held accountable until what? 5 years, and now he's only been suspended now. So all of a sudden, this cop who has these prejudiced, I don't know, memorabilia in his house.
Outright racist.
And now all of a sudden it's like, well, he did shoot and kill a black man back in 2009, but let's focus on this right now. Well, why was this never brought up at the time? Because you're trying to tell me no one else knew that this man had some sort of bias or prejudice in his system? It's because we continue to allow police officers to be rehired or put in different positions without being held accountable. And what happens is they slip through the cracks and they continue to rot this system that I want to believe in. But until you hold officers accountable, issues like this will continue to come up.
And what are we going to find in this investigation? What is the answer when you say, why do you have all of these Confederate flags? Well, because I believe in states' rights. The one right they were fighting for was the bad one. That was it.
Yeah.
It was, and it's just like, so what is his answer going to be?
Yeah, it wasn't like, hey, we really wanted the right to be able to produce hemp in our states. No, it was about slavery.
Slaves, that was it.
Anyway, I don't want to get into that obvious conversation. Last thing, I agree with Francis on reopening the case because, guys, if we had found a certificate from any other terrorist organization in a cop's house, we definitely look into all of his cases. Imagine you go into a Muslim cop's house and you find a certificate from ISIS. You think you might want to reopen investigations, especially one where he murdered a Christian, right?
Well, you wouldn't have to. He'd already be held accountable, such as Officer Noor in Minnesota. Yeah, the officer that was held accountable for that.
So exactly. So and that's the most extreme case, and we've never even had that of a certificate of ISIS or anything like that from a cop. But the KKK is just as much of a terrorist group.
So we have another officer to tell you about, another thing to do with officers. This past Friday, of course, marked 5 years since Mike Brown was shot and killed in Ferguson, Missouri. The head of the St. Louis Police Officers Association decided to mark the anniversary with this picture. I want to show you. He posted this on Facebook, and as you can see, it's a picture of former officer Darren Wilson, the officer who shot and killed the unarmed teenager Mike Brown. And the caption says, "Happy Alive Day, Darren." This is on the anniversary of Mike Brown's death.
Yeah, Brooke warned me not to curse, and I almost did it just right there.
Frustrating,
okay, so pretending that Darren Wilson's life was in danger. So let's review the facts of the case real quick from back then. So Michael Brown had a close gunshot on his hand. So people say, well, they were struggling for the gun. Well, in a best case scenario for Darren Wilson, they were in the beginning, okay? It's possible that the officer drew his gun and Brown just went like this, but everybody, including all the newspapers, just put out there like, oh, he must have been grabbing for the gun. No, you don't know that at all. What we do know is he was shot at close range in his hand. Then we all know, totally undisputed, he starts running away. And then there's this part in the autopsy where they say, here we can go to J3, the graphic, and this is I'm quoting the St. Louis Post-Dispatch talking about the autopsy. A 6th shot that hit the forearm traveled from the back of the arm to the inner arm, which means Brown's palms could not have been facing Wilson, as some witnesses have said. Okay, that's an independent person who took it from everything she wrote was basically in favor of the cops. And what they were saying there is he couldn't have had his hands up as people were claiming because it entered from the back of his arm and came out the front of his arm. Well, that also means that he couldn't have been facing the cop when he was shot in the back of his arm. I think the most likely scenario is he started running away, as everyone admits. He gets shot in the back of the arm, turns around, and then gets shot in the front. And he definitely got shot in the front for the lethal shot, including the headshot. So now in this scenario where everyone says Michael Brown was running away, now you're gonna talk about, oh my God, Wilson, Officer Wilson, happy alive day. My God. Maybe he could have turned around and run back 30 yards and you somehow would have missed him with all the weaponry that you had and he was unarmed. So forget that Michael Brown's actually dead. But my God, an officer could have been injured for a second. There's a 1% of a 1% chance. So it's a good thing you murdered Michael Brown. So that's the implication of that tweet. So these are the cops that still run St. Louis, that still run all those areas, Ferguson, Missouri, etc. Right? So whether it's Darren Wilson or not, the guy who tweeted it is still there saying, well, if guys caught a black guy unarmed running away from you, but you had some sort of altercation with him. What did he have? In this case, he didn't have loose cigarettes, he had cigarellos. And they say in all of the papers smeared him with, he had marijuana in his system. What difference does that make? He was running away when he was shot and killed. Now you're talking about Happy Alive Day to the guy who shot and killed him. And then you go, I can't figure out why the communities all across the country don't trust us. Yeah, well, that's because you're stupid and you don't give a damn about the communities. That's why you can't figure it out.
And just like what this says to all those people there, all those people who went through, this was a horrifying, tragic event. Like, let alone the fact that a kid, he was a kid, because a lot of people who don't look like that look at him and look at that face. His face wasn't even like fully formed. His face wasn't formed like a man, and think, oh, he's tall and big. He looks like a grown man. He's scary. He looked like a kid to me. He was a kid. He looked like a tall kid. And a kid lost his life that day, and that for all of those people, being the head of the Police Officers Association, I get it. Your job is to protect the police, but you should be interested in good policing.
Well, what you mentioned there, what they described, that's what Darren Wilson described him as, and that's what a lot of newspapers ran with when they were calling him no angel, and they were saying he was a monster and he didn't look his age. I mean, how many times do we see that? Relentlessly, the dehumanizing aspect of unarmed black men whenever it comes into an interaction with law enforcement. And listen, guys, this is why we do say Black Lives Matter, and we consistently say it, and why it's so infuriating when people try to deflect and turn around and say, oh, Blue Lives Matter, because that's what this instance is. It's a way to continuously remind American citizens, oh, Black Lives Matter don't matter, but Blue Lives Matter. If we're alive on the day that someone else was shot and killed, that's what we should be highlighting. It shouldn't be in memory of a young man whose life was lost and families are still in agonizing pain who never got justice. But let's just remind the world, hey, this guy is still alive. That's fine, that's all. He never get held accountable at all, but we just want to rub it in your nose that he shot and killed your son and he's still alive.
The only tiny bit of justice here is that Darren Wilson cannot get a job.
Yeah, well,
he's not on the police force.
Okay, give it time. It's all in the training, man. When they tell you that stupid saying of better to be judged by 12 than carried out by 6, that means kill them and we'll sort it out later. That is not what we should be training our cops. And all right, we gotta go. But I got a whole nother hour for you guys, including post game for members, tyt.com/join. And Breitbart is almost out of business. Let's celebrate that when we come back.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
We're gonna do a little thing we like to call Weekly World News. Weekly World News. I cull stories from around the globe, stories that aren't covered on the main show or aren't covered enough, and I turn it into a 5-question quiz for Dave and Steve. All right, do we have our answers? A from Dave and C from Steve. And the correct answer is B, an oil tanker that sank off the coast of China. Okay, we have one answer of B and one answer of C. What is the correct answer? It is, of course, A, an airplane wing walking stunt gone wrong. Okay, we have an answer of A from Dave and C from Steve. The correct answer is B. We have an answer of B and C. What is the correct answer? In true Weekly World News tradition, it's A.
Come on.
Taking the bear out for ice cream.
That can't possibly be true. We're terrible today. Just terrible.
I want to tell you about VPNs because they're awesome. You'll be on the internet, you'll be searching, and with NordVPN, which is one of our sponsors, you're able to protect yourself from some bad actors online. And we know that there are lots of bad actors online. So since you watched the show, we're giving you guys an awesome deal. You get 75% off for 3 years, guys. Not just 1 year, not 2 years, 3 years. And then you also get 1 month for free. So go to nordvpn.com/TYT and you'll get that awesome offer.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitsing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing. I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Jank. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes. All right, back on the Young Turks. A little bit of breaking news on the Jeffrey Epstein case. FBI has raided what has been nicknamed Pedophile Island. That is the island that Jeffrey Epstein owned within the US Virgin Islands. And about a dozen FBI agents in speedboats came onto the island and are now thoroughly searching it for evidence. They likely, obviously, would have done that anyway if he was alive, because they're looking for evidence of his crimes. I'm surprised they didn't do it earlier, but even after he's passed away, obviously there are other people implicated in his crimes, so they went to go collect information there. So let's see if they come up with anything there, and could be very, very interesting. All right, so now let's go on to our guests. Joining me now is Lindsay Ellefson. She's a media writer for The Wrap. And she's written an article about Breitbart and how they're not doing so well. So, of course, I'd love to talk to her about that. Lindsay, welcome to the Young Turks.
Hi.
Hey, although funny enough, I actually have mixed feelings about this phenomenon. So I want to talk to you about digital media in general, but let's start with the article you wrote about Breitbart. So how much trouble are they in?
in the piece that I wrote, we found out that their traffic declined 72% since January of 2017. So that was around the inauguration. They had great traffic numbers, and it has declined 72% until June, which is the month that we have the most recent numbers for.
That's devastating. But they have a second issue as well, which is revenue specifically coming from advertising. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, they had a huge advertiser boycott in 2017. A lot of people remember it as being pretty catastrophic for Breitbart overall. A lot of places have seen these ad revenue boycotts. Fox News sees them all the time. Sleeping Giants is really good at getting people involved and kind of pointing out, these people are advertising on your platform and this is what they have to say, or, letting people know where their advertising is actually showing up. So they saw a 90% loss of advertising in May of 2017, which was just 3 months into their boycott.
So Lindsay, there's a couple of different phenomena here, but let's first address the thing that I think if you're a logical person comes screaming out of that fact, which is, wait, how are they still in business?
That's a really good question. What's really interesting to me is that they actually have right now job openings listed on their website. They still have enough revenue to be saying we're looking to hire investigative reporters. We're looking to do a little bit more digging on the topics that matter to us. They still are sending reporters out. I was just recently at the Detroit debate and I saw reporters from Breitbart out there, doing their thing, scrumming with the rest of us. So it's not like they're completely destitute at this time. That's not the case at all. They've still got a lot of revenue. They've still got a lot of traffic. It's just that they're sharing that traffic with a wider number of competitors.
Yeah, no, look, I know digital media and their traffic is not nearly enough to sustain that business. No way, no how, no chance. So that leads to me an even more interesting phenomenon. That if you're in media and you're, a standard media operation, CNN, New York Times, etc., you have your certain source of revenue, whether it's subscription for New York Times, the cable fees that people pay for CNN and the advertising, etc. That's normal and it's very understandable how they make their money. And even so, most of those media companies are in trouble. I don't mean CNN, New York Times, but I certainly mean the smaller newspapers and a lot of the smaller cable channels. If you're on the left wing, God help you, there's nobody coming to the rescue. It's just whatever you got from your audience and advertise. For the right wing, if you lose not only 90% of your advertising because of the boycott, but you lost 72% of your actual audience, there's no business that can sustain that over any period of time. So it's got to be right-wing donors that are keeping them afloat. So what's your take on that, Lindsay?
I remember when I was looking into the research for this article, I saw something that Steve Bannon himself said in a film in 2018, where he said that 90% of right-wing websites are going to be completely donor-based going forward, and he doesn't see a path for any partisan media that isn't completely donor-based except for Fox News. But even that, they lost the Mercers after what he said in the Michael Wolff book about Donald Trump, so they keep losing backers, but his idea, his thinking, and as someone who understands the inner workings of Breitbart, is that donors will continue to give to the conservative websites.
Well, of course they will. So let me explain that phenomenon to people. So look, there are people who care about issues that give to nonprofits on the left and the right. So the ones on the left are almost purely, not completely, but Clinton Foundation. But outside of that are largely really to help people, whether it's on political issues they care about like the environment or just to help with cancer, et cetera. On the right wing, there's plenty of people who do help with cancer, the arts, and do great charity. There's also people who give to politics for selfish reasons because they want the tax cuts, right? Today, Bernie Sanders' team put out a tweet about how the Walton family will get taxed like $147 billion under Bernie Sanders' plan, just on the estate tax alone. The Koch brothers will lose about $96 billion. If you got $96 billion on the line, what difference does it make to give 10 or 20 million to propaganda outlets like Breitbart? So, Lindsay, I'm curious if the rest of the media understands this phenomenon. Like we know that the right wing is propped up, again, outside of Fox News, and I can get into that interesting example too, but is completely backed up by right wing billionaires for the sole purpose of propaganda. I still feel like that a lot of the media is in total denial over that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to come to terms with that, especially I think for people on the left side who, like you've said, struggle to get that sort of same amount of donation, that same amount of rah on the other side. And I think also people in corporate media, the people who spend a lot of their time reporting on these things, who look at these things, that's not something that makes a lot of sense to them either. I've worked in corporate media too, and the idea of being funded by a donor, being beholden to a donor, or having an agenda-based content model that has something to do with the people who are funding it is kind of foreign to those people. Not entirely, because there's still advertisements and they always have to be a little bit careful about what they're saying in any given block, given what could be coming up in the commercial after that. But it's a whole different ballgame when you're dealing with these smaller partisan places. And I think there's a huge disconnect between the left, the right, and the corporate media.
Yeah, and I don't want people to get mistaken in terms of what it means to be a donor. So if there's someone investing, so the Mercers originally invested into Breitbart, thinking that it would be a good investment, plus for, in their case, propaganda. Now, what was that, Lindsay?
It was.
Yeah, initially they had good traffic, as your article points out. And so whether we agree or disagree with them, they had plenty of traffic in the beginning. And which gets me to Fox News. Rupert Murdoch lost about $500 million on Fox News before it turned a profit. So he put in about $90 million a year that he burned for 5 straight years, $450 million before Fox became profitable. Now, that is really bold vision, but that was an investment. It wasn't a donation, and it paid off for him because now Fox makes billions of dollars. That's normal capitalism. But for a lot of these, especially the digital media outlets, I know digital media, there's no way they're making money. No way. I mean, you see cuts on Vice, HuffPost, you name any digital media company that has had hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, and they're making cuts because they can't sustain it. And they haven't had a 72% drop in audience. They haven't had a 90% drop in revenue. And I think, Lindsay, it's important, and I wonder if there's any movement afoot at all, or maybe your article is the one that begins to kick it off, about some truth in advertising. So for the rest of the media to go, okay, but Breitbart is not propped up by investments, they're propped up by donors. So that's a different animal altogether. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't. 100%. Yeah, I don't see it yet. I feel like even the Obama administration had the Daily Caller in their White House press room. So there's this disconnect between the right wing being paid to say certain things and the rest of the media doing their best with a lot of different problems and biases and perspectives, et cetera. But so far, I don't see that distinction. Do you see that distinction that the rest of the media is making, or no?
No, I don't see that distinction in the rest of the media, and I definitely don't see that distinction in consumers. And I think it would be important, just as important, if consumers had a little bit more of an understanding of the way that the funding worked too.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if they went to a subscription model, for example, and there was a lot of right-wing people who I don't agree with, that I would probably call deplorable, if you will, and they had enough money to sustain it, well then okay, it's a free country, you write what you want, and you got people who will back you on it. But when you just have these giant donors just give you money for propaganda, for tax cuts, people should at least know what your motivation is. So Lindsay, with a really interesting and important article about Breitbart in this context. Everybody check it out at The Wrap, and obviously we'll have a link down to it if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook. Lindsay Ellefson, thank you so much for joining us, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, guys. When we come back, I'm gonna talk to a great writer about Nancy Pelosi. Is she the tactical genius that the rest of the media makes her out to be, or is there a case to be made for the opposite when we return?
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
For the first time ever, we are the biggest voting bloc in America.
One of the people we've been talking about for months and months will be the president of the United States for the next 4 years.
And for a lot of us, this is the first time that we're ever going to vote.
Do you have any idea how much of a difference 4 years makes?
The action that we take right now doesn't just affect us right now.
Discussion is important, but words aren't the only thing. You have to take action.
So that we can actually affect real change instead of just talking about it.
You have that power, so don't let people silence you.
Get out there and take a part in making a difference.
Every voice really does matter, whether young or old, especially young people. Get out there and vote, damn it.
Now, more than ever, we can make a change.
I'm gonna vote because I want this country to be different.
I don't want the older generation to decide our future.
I want to make this world a better place for my son. You can make change.
So get out there, go, do it.
Vote IRL.
Vote IRL.
Vote IRL.
Vote IRL.
Vote Earl.
Vote in real life.
Vote IRL.
Vote IRL. It's scary, we have to leave our couches.
All right, we got a graphic incoming. Putting up 3, 2, 1. All right, video next. And next video. And power panel. And dropping it.
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm at a Wolfpack gathering.
We're growing. I see faces that I recognize, but I also see a lot of faces that I don't recognize, and that's fantastic.
We are all taking time out of our lives to be here, and that's amazing. That means we truly believe in this. Make no mistake, everyone in this room is a leader in a Wolfpack.
Alaska, West Virginia, Montana, Georgia, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, everyone is here. All these folks paid with their own money and sometimes took vacation days to come here to strategize on how to get our democracy back and get money out of politics.
Or you get more political power just because you have more money. This is why it requires a constitutional amendment.
The process of winning in your state next year doesn't begin when session begins. It begins right now.
To work to a goal, something this big that you're actually making a difference of, there's very few things in the world that really compare to that feeling.
Equal rights to fair representation, rights for human beings, anti-corruption laws, and free and fair elections. That's what we are fighting for.
What were the founding fathers? Revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the document.
So Article 5 is the way we have to go.
This is how you do it.
You're in this as a team, you're in this together. The fight will always continue.
That fight is not between the left and the right. That fight is between basically greed and humanity.
So I'm asking you to put differences aside, whether you're conservative or independent or progressive, to join forces to say no more corruption.
You get beyond the fear, you take that first step, and you'll change the world.
What I want to leave you with, of course, is hope. And I want to assure you that if we keep fighting together, we're going to win together. We're going to get that convention, we're going to get that amendment, and we're going to get our democracy back. Come join us, wolf-pack.com.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Another great guest for you guys. Do you have anything but great guests? Are you kidding me? All right. Joining me now is Elizabeth Spires. She's the founder of The Insurrection. She also wrote the article, Beyond Pelosi, Why Impeachment Can't Penetrate the Cult of DC Savvy for the New Republic. Elizabeth, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Look, I'll be honest, loved your article. Loved it.
Thank you.
Because it was riddled with facts, which is usually good for an article, a news article. But let's start with the original premise. So conventional wisdom in Washington is that Nancy Pelosi is a brilliant tactician, and what would the Democratic Party do without her? You seem to have countered that. So what's your take on the veracity of that conventional wisdom?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is that I think, generally speaking, Pelosi is a brilliant tactician, but I think we almost go so far in giving her the benefit of the doubt in that respect that she can say things that are essentially evidenceless, and we go a little bit too far in assuming that she has, evidence to back it up. And as I said in the article, I've seen this before. I was a financial reporter for a long time, and I remember people giving Alan Greenspan the same benefit of the doubt going into the credit crisis. And it wasn't based on some silly notion that he's not intelligent or that he didn't have some grander strategy, but I think there was too little attempt to hold him accountable and really ask for an explicit rationale. And I feel like I'm seeing the same thing with Pelosi when it comes to impeachment.
Yeah, so look, funny enough, as tough as your article was on Pelosi on that issue, I think Pelosi, I'm much tougher on Pelosi. I think Pelosi is not even a good tactician, let alone a brilliant one. I think she couldn't tactician her way out of a wet paper bag. But anyways, get to that in a second.
You're not the first person who said that to me.
And you said I am, or I'm not the first person?
You're not, no,
okay,
you're not.
Yeah, well, good. I used to be the only person saying it, so I'm glad others are now beginning to say that. In fact, let me ask you about that as a bridge to the impeachment talk.
Sure.
The fact that a lot of people now believe that she's bungled the impeachment situation, has that finally begun to get people to question, wait a minute, were we right all along about how great she is?
Well, I think to some extent that has happened, because what's going to happen is that if impeachment doesn't happen because, among other things, Nancy Pelosi was standing in the way of it, and we have these long-term downstream consequences that we all, I think are absolutely going to be there if no one holds Trump accountable, that's really going to be her legacy. It won't be how smart we thought she was 8 years ago. And I think that's partly, that's something the party is wrestling with. I hope that she's wrestling with it. And we're watching other people having to sort of step in and take the reins where she's not displaying leadership on this issue.
Okay, again, one last thing before we go to the evidence on impeachment and how she might not be playing that right, to say the least. The other day, Jerry Nadler came out and said, no, what we're doing in the House is an impeachment inquiry. It's official, it's real. But most people didn't believe him. So having studied this, what's your take? Are they doing an impeachment inquiry or aren't they?
In my opinion, it's better than nothing because it could go into an inquiry. It's certainly better than what we've been dealing with for the last few months, which is Democrats sitting on their hands and not doing anything. I hope that that's not the entirety of the strategy, because you don't see the party uniting behind it as if it's an impeachment inquiry. And a big reason why it's so important to go through that process is that the case needs to be made publicly, and people need to understand what's happening. If people get the sense that this is another, behind closed doors discussion, then what's the point? When you hold the president accountable, it can't be through an obscure process that nobody, the general public, isn't party to. So I would vastly prefer that the party get on the same page about what's happening and initiate, in my opinion, impeachment proceedings. This seems like a sort of odd hedge, and I certainly prefer it to doing nothing. But it's not. It undermines what would be a legitimate impeachment process in certain ways if it continues to happen as a quiet process that's only happening in committee, and the public doesn't really understand what's going on.
Well, look, Democrats doing nothing is not news, and them thinking it's a brilliant strategy is not news. Them never making their own case is not news. These incompetent, bumbling fools have been doing this for decades on end, if you ask me. But again, now let's get into the heart of the impeachment issue. So Nancy Pelosi makes a number of claims about why you shouldn't pursue impeachment. Let's go through them as best as we can, one by one. She said that it's okay, she doesn't have to because Donald Trump is doing self-impeachment. Elizabeth, does anybody have any idea what she's talking about?
No, I think as soon as that quote came out of her mouth, even people on her team knew that it was ridiculous. There's no such thing as self-impeachment. And if the idea was everything he's doing is so horrible, we don't need impeachment because people see how bad it is. Well, people said that a couple of months into the Trump administration, said it can't get any worse. Every week it does get worse. Trump keeps escalating because no one's stopping him. I mean, that's the bottom line. Until people refuse to hold him accountable with the power that Democrats now have in the House, this will continue to happen. If you think you've seen the bottom, you haven't, because there's always going to be somebody in the Trump administration who's going to come up with something that's worse than whatever we've already seen and sink to that level. So it's just a matter of how deep and wide your imagination is if you think it can't get worse.
Well, Elizabeth, by saying in essence that we're never going to impeach him, doesn't that give, especially a dangerous guy like Donald Trump, who is already inclined in this direction, basically a blank check saying, don't worry. I mean, you've already broken at least 2 very clear laws. Obstruction, there's 10 instances of it in the Mueller report, and campaign finance laws, which is a felony that your co-conspirator is in prison for today, right now, your co-conspirator. So like people forget about that because the Democrats never mention it because they suck at their jobs and they don't know what they're doing. But anyway, like if you never bring those things up and you give Trump a blank check, isn't it saying to him, you can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it?
Yeah, and I actually worry about something that has much longer term ramifications than that. If you think about how bad Trump is, and then you consider that in the context of his weaknesses, his political weaknesses, his strategic weaknesses, then think about what would happen if you give him a free pass, and then we have another president who's like Trump, but let's suggest that he's more intelligent, better informed, a better strategist. We could have a person who's 10 times more dangerous. And if we don't hold Trump accountable, we've set a precedent that there is no bottom. That there's nothing that someone in the Oval Office can do that's so bad that if the political winds are blowing their way, won't be tolerated. And what that means is that every single norm that we have that holds democracy together but isn't technically a law becomes meaningless. And frankly, many of our laws become meaningless. Parts of the Constitution become meaningless. So the destruction to democracy long term is almost a bigger concern to me than whatever happens in the next 18 months with Trump.
Yeah,
because it's the precedent that we're setting.
100%. There's so many things she's gotten wrong that we got to now pick up the speed and go getting through all the ridiculous claims. So let's start with the one you just said there, or transition to that. She says, "Well, look, it's bad politics." Well, there's 2 things wrong with that. Number one, they're stuck in the 90s. We can get to that in a second. But isn't this a problem when you say Mueller says DOJ cannot indict, right or wrong? That is the opinion of the special counsel. So the only basically government organization that could do anything about the president breaking the law is the House of Representatives in putting together impeachment. So in essence, Pelosi's saying, I don't care what the law is. I don't care what my responsibility is as Speaker of the House. I'm just gonna play politics. How is that not brazen?
Well, I think it's brazen, but as I mentioned in the article, I also think it's a bad political calculation. I work as a political strategist in my day job, and I just don't see the potential ramifications that she's articulating on the ground. I think there's a lot of fear mongering around what happens if we go through the impeachment process and the Senate fails to convict, which I believe they won't. But in my view, that's not the point of it. So when Pelosi articulates in very vague terms what she thinks the 2020 consequences are, I just don't see the evidence behind it. I don't see any evidence that, for instance, even if Democrats are not wholeheartedly in favor of impeachment, which by the way they are, but even if the whole country isn't wholeheartedly in favor of impeachment, which we've never begun impeachment investigations around a majority sentiment that they should definitely happen. That didn't happen with Nixon, didn't happen with Clinton. So she's sort of manufacturing a scenario that has never existed in history, where you need unanimous sentiment that the president should be impeached before you consider, beginning an impeachment proceeding. And it doesn't have any historical precedent. There's not even any data. If you were going to make the argument that Pelosi and Dem leadership are just being pragmatic, you still have to have some evidence to back that up. You have to make a case that when we get to 2020, there would be some big backlash that would affect, Democratic turnout. It would affect motivation, and it would rally, the Trump base, which I don't buy that either. Right? Family full of Trump voters in Alabama. So I don't see them becoming more politically engaged than they are.
Of course not. Of course not.
Democrats are going after Trump.
It's total excuses. Well, look, Washington's a fact-free zone, and establishment Democrats have their own alternative facts. That's why I was stunned to read your article. Like, this has actual verifiable facts. It's very unlike the rest of the media. So along those lines, they say, well, when the Republicans did an unjust impeachment of Bill Clinton, it wound up hurting them. First of all, you're just comparing all of Donald Trump's crimes to an unjust impeachment, you moron. That is a terrible political strategy and also not true. And second of all, your facts are wrong. Guess who won the presidential election after the Republicans impeached Bill Clinton? Oh, right, the Republicans. I mean, so Elizabeth, this is kind of a funny question, but when you walk around Washington, D.C., or you talk to other reporters, how can they not see how counterfactual every one of these propositions are?
Well, I think there's a weakness both in media and by the way, in political establishment, where people are very reticent or more to the point. They're not really conditioned to think very long term about these things at all. Political consultants are geared to think toward the next cycle as a matter of course. And they have heavy incentive to do that. Journalists do that too. Not intentionally, I don't think, but it's also particularly for political reporters who were in the trenches in the last cycle, it's hard for them not to experience the kind of cognitive bias where everything in this cycle looks like whatever they saw in the last cycle. And some of it's just, there's not a lot of impetus or incentive for people to really look longitudinally at these things and how they happen. I would argue that if we have to compare the current situation to a prior impeachment, Nixon's a better analog. And if you look at support for Nixon's impeachment in the beginning, it was far lower than support for impeaching Trump right now. So if you have to go back and look at precedent, then there is a precedent. And it would seem to indicate that we should begin impeachment proceedings immediately.
This should not be a political calculation. I'm dead set against considering this as a political calculation. But if you were to look at it as a political calculation, the Democrats impeached Nixon. Guess who won the next election? Democrats. So all facts point to impeachment, but Nancy Pelosi likes that donor money. And so look, I can go on and on. She said that if the Senate doesn't convict him, that he can't be prosecuted afterwards. Total lie, not remotely true, a preposterous thing to say. And she implicitly basically is approving of Donald Trump's actions. So I keep wanting to ask you more questions. Answer this. And does she understand, do the Democratic establishment, do they understand at all that when they don't pursue Donald Trump and Trump says, see, I was exonerated, it looks like the Democrats are agreeing with him?
I think there's a funny level of naivete about it. There's this idea, and we see this even with establishment Democrats who are running for office. When Joe Biden gets up and says, well, things would be different if Trump was out of office, Republicans would start acting in good faith. I don't see any evidence for that being true. And certainly, I would imagine that when she has a moment to herself to think, Nancy Pelosi doesn't think that's true. So there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance that's politically advantageous. I said in the column, I thought that, and this is speculation on my part, but that part of the reason why Pelosi doesn't want to pursue impeachment is because it shifts risk to the 2020 candidates. It takes some of the pressure off of leadership if things don't go in the right direction. But that's risky in and of itself, especially when you consider the downside of not holding Trump accountable. And there's this sort of weird reticence to not consider even the political cost of doing it. I agree with you. I can make an argument for impeachment entirely, on a moral basis and on a rule of law basis. But I also think that there's a real argument to be made on a political basis. If you're going to be a complete nihilist and solely make this decision based on a political calculation.
Yeah.
I don't find the logic persuasive that this is even a good political decision.
Not remotely, not 1% as usual, bumbling fools. But I got to end on this. Look, your article brought up 2 points that nobody else does. One is this cowardice on the part of Pelosi. You didn't say that, I did. Saying, well, look, if Biden or some other candidate loses, we blame it on them. But if I do impeachment and our candidate loses, then people blame it on me. And so my personal glory will be diminished.
Yeah.
That is so grating on the nerves, and other than cowardice, it shows incredible selfishness, doesn't care about the Democratic Party, doesn't care about this country at all, et cetera. But you also brought up a second point that no one else does. She said it, she said Donald Trump is good for raising money. So she makes more money, and that is her only source of power. It's certainly not brilliance, and certainly not defeating Republicans. I mean, legislatively, she almost never wins. But she has a ton of corrupt money backing her. So she says, hey, look, I can raise more donor money if Trump's in office. Isn't that a huge part of her real motivation as to why she's not doing impeachment?
I think that's a piece of it, but I also think it's not even, I would say it's not even as directly bad faith as that. This is a strategy that has worked for her before, and she can't imagine being successful at it without having that kind of villain on the other side of it. But again, even that doesn't make sense to me on a pragmatic basis. It's not like you can't raise money off of a horrible person in office in the middle of an impeachment proceeding, because this isn't the only election. This isn't the only battle we have to fight. Right now we have a majority in the House and pretty much nowhere else. And Trump is busy packing the judiciary. I mean, there are plenty of fundraising opportunities. So again, if we're just going to even think like nihilists, there's no lack of fundraising opportunities if impeachment proceedings begin. Yeah. So I think of it more as a failure of the imagination in two senses. One is that they really can't conceive of the long run consequences of not impeaching him, and many of which could be apocalyptic for democracy. And then the second one is that, if they view this as the only viable strategy, what does that say about their tactical and strategic brilliance? Surely there are other things in the arsenal, particularly with a president as bad as Trump, and with it as many, long run systemic things that he's done to create damage to our democracy and to our country. There should be more than one fundraising tool in the arsenal.
Absolutely. All right, if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook, we're gonna have 2 links for you down in the description box you can click on. TYT.com/impeach. Let's go, let's go, let's go, okay? And more importantly in this case, Elizabeth Spires' wonderful article in the New Republic.
Thank you.
So please click on it, check it out. Chock full of actual facts. So it's absolutely refreshing to read. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, when we come back for the members, we're gonna talk about some lighter stuff, but God knows, once we get rolling in what we call the post game, the last half hour of the Young Turks, anything can happen. But we are gonna start talking about the vacation that I took recently and some cutesy moments with my kids, etc. So on the lighter side of things, TYT.com/join to become a member and get the last half hour of the Young Turks. We'll see you there.
The windmills.
All right, Post Game, Cenk and Brett with you guys. Look, I have many days like this, but today in particular went by in a second and a half.
Crazy.
It's nearly 6 o'clock here in LA. Really? Where the hell did I woke up 12 hours ago? That was like a second ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Why do you think it went by so fast?
I don't know. It was blitzkrieg. But like for the reason my days go by so blindingly quick is because it's one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, and by the time I look up, it's 6 o'clock, right? There's never a let up. Like I had 6 meetings today, and also prepared the show and sent out a 28 different email, blah blah blah. It's 6 o'clock, right? So, anyways, on this random topic number 2. What sports do you watch? I just got curious because Edwin and I were talking about football.
I watch a lot of it depends on what time of year it is, and it doesn't necessarily correspond. Like I'm watching less baseball now and more just saying I'm ready for football. Like I'm watching Hard Knocks. Like that's I've transitioned on, and the Dodgers are my team and they're the best. But I typically watch the hell out of college football. I've transitioned more to the NFL lately just because I'm older than everyone, but I don't know. So college football, I grew up on my dad he won the Rose Bowl. I grew up on college football.
And if you don't live in California, you also have to recognize how sad California football is. That like in LA, we didn't have a team for so long, and then we weirdly overcompensated by bringing 2 teams in, which is such a stupid thing to do. It's such an American thing to do. Anyway, but on Sundays, like Sports Talk Radio here would be talking about what happened yesterday, the USC game or the UCLA football game. I'm like, what are you, a bunch of kids? Like NFL football is on right now. Okay, we got Ravens versus Steelers. You're talking about UCLA football? UCLA is not even good. It's so sad.
I liked that era the most though, because you didn't have, given that the UCLA struggles were so real, you would just kind of have to, the game would be on and you just kind of have to drag yourself. But when you don't have a team, it frees you up to watch the best games because they just give you the best games.
In college football.
In NFL, when we didn't have an NFL on Sunday.
Oh, I see,
if you have a team, if we had a team and they were bad, you would just have to slog along with it and be like, all right, guys, let's do it. But if you don't have a team, it frees you up to just watch the best games.
You know what, Brett, that's a great point. Last thing on this, then we'll turn to vacation, is that it's a minor miracle I'm such a big football fan because I lived in New Jersey where we got the worst games in America. Nonstop Jets games and Giants games, right? Oh, it's the Giants versus the Cardinals again. Yay. Jets, Bills. I mean, there have been a couple of good Jets, Bills games, but like overall, miserable viewing experience. I remember my uncle lived in Pittsburgh, and one weekend we drove all the way to Pittsburgh from Jersey, get there, and I'm like, oh my God, the Pittsburgh game is on because we're in Pittsburgh. How awesome is that? And I kept asking my uncle, like, so the Steelers are on every Sunday? He's like, of course they are, right? I'm like, why don't we live in Pittsburgh? Why am I stuck with the goddamn Jets? Okay, right. Anyway, so that's why I can't let go of the NFL package.
Oh, really?
Like I way overpay. I'm gonna jump off the roof because of how much it costs. But I can't let go. They're like Red Zone package. I know Red Zone channel is great.
Yeah.
Nah,
you want to stay with it.
I want to see the Steelers. I want to see my fantasy football players.
My old boss works the NFL Network, and I was in there on a Sunday looking at how they call the switches on that, and it is the most intense experience. You think it's crazy here? The experience of there's like 6 teams of people watching games and signaling they're about to score. It's like, and then there's someone behind them going like, take bank 6, camera 6. and they would just go back and forth. But like in the control room, it's like being in Vegas, I guess is the closest thing, where all the games are on at the same time.
You know what, Brett? I don't know why I never thought of that. I know people who work at NFL Films too, or the NFL. I should go there on a Sunday. That would be so cool.
There's NFL stars, like ex-NFL stars, walking around having a good time.
Oh, what am I? Yeah, I guess I'm stupid. Why didn't I ever ask to go on a Sunday? Oh my God! All right, we'll talk about it off air. All right. Okay. You know what? Super last thing, since Ja'Cory is in the control room, we talked about basketball before, you and I playing basketball, and I was starting to worry you guys were overhyping me, but then I realized no, it's worth it. Anyway, Ja'Cory, you and I played together for the first time this past Sunday. What do you think?
Yes, sir. You're frustrating to play with. I've never met someone who plays a more emblematic style of basketball of their personality. Like, just by sheer will and force, you make shots go down and you slide through screens. Like, you just decide it's gonna happen and it does. Like, I've never been more frustrated by anything in my life. Like, good defense in your face be damned. Like, the shot being all sorts of crooked and sideways, you just decide it's going in and it does. And it's really frustrating.
For me, there is an element of get tired.
Yeah.
Get tired already. It's been too long.
Totally.
And I haven't played in 2 months because of the ankle sprain. Anyway, Ja'Cory, thank you. That's actually one of the best compliments I've ever gotten. I appreciate it. And by the way, Ja'Cory, I mean, talk about maddening. He does that thing where he goes around the behind the backboard and lays it in, and everybody knows it's coming, and nobody stops it. So
I'd stop it.
He's going around. He's gonna go. God damn it! It's in again. Okay. So nice job. That was fun. And he saved the day. If he hadn't come, we probably wouldn't have played. So wins all around for Ja'Cory. All right, thank you, man. Appreciate it. And I had a good day. To be fair, I had a good day. I have bad days, trust me. But anyways, let's get to fun, cutesy family stuff. So when we were in Hawaii, we saved money for doing different things, but we decided we're going to splurge on the helicopter ride. Because if you're in Hawaii, you're supposed to take a helicopter ride. We've already gone twice over the last 4 or 5 years and not done that. But if all the islands, the one you really you should take a helicopter ride in is Kauai. So we decided, all right, we're gonna go for it, okay? So here's a cutesy picture of us in front of the helicopter. So this is obviously me, Wendy, Pro, and Joy. They're about to put it up any second now.
You know, you go into the control room and say, here are the elements.
No, it's okay. So me wearing a Young Turks shirt, that's weird. Anyway, so we strapped this part I think I told you guys in a post-game or old school, we strapped a GoPro on Pro's head, and he accidentally recorded our sneakers and stuff. So we're good to go. Joy gets in there, not immediately, but soon thereafter falls asleep.
Really?
So the whole time I'm thinking, well, that money's burned. Okay. Could have left her on the ground, saved a good amount of cash, but anyways.
She fell asleep. Why? It's the loudest thing in the world.
I know. She's just like, the reason we didn't do the helicopter ride like 5 years ago, the first time we went to Hawaii, was because Joy was like a year old. I'm like, babe, she's not gonna get anything out of it, right? And then we'll have to go again, and I don't wanna spend that money again, right? Turns out she was right, because she didn't get anything out of it anyway. She's 6 years old. She's like, not Barbie, not Barbie, not Barbie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man, that would drive me nuts.
Yeah, no, she's like obsessed with dolls. She is the stereotypical girl, okay? Loves pink, loves Barbie, LOL, American Doll, everything.
Wow.
And we like tried to go in and like, hey, how about this? How about this? And he's like, not Barbie, not Barbie, not Barbie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a friend who's got a daughter who, they're like, listen, we went gender neutral on all the colors and everything, and she's like, I will wear my pink dress to sleep.
No, totally. Joy, like instinctually dresses. What a weird thing. Why is it more feminine to be, dressed than pants? That makes no sense. Historically, it doesn't make any sense. Guys wore togas, so it's not necessarily. How the hell did that get into her head at the age of like 2 or 3? Like she'd be like getting ready for preschool, so it must have been 3, and she's like, no, dress, only dress, only dress, only pink.
Go for it.
But in different times, pink wasn't necessarily even a female color. It's so weird. So
who knows?
Anyways, all right. So let's show you some of the helicopter video.
My name is Bogart. I'd like you to just check your belts, make sure it's all fastened. If you'd like to review the safety briefing given to Airbus ground crew sky briefing cards and aircraft.
Yeah, so there's a couple of fun things here. One is that when no one is talking, they play that fun Hawaiian music. Okay, but you can talk too, as you'll see in the next video. We start talking, and Brett, you were saying that was the scary part as we were lifting off. No, there's a lot of scary parts, and they do it on purpose. They fly almost into the mountain and then pull up. Like ha, and I'm like, I got kids in the helicopter. That's not really that much of a ha.
Yes, exactly. Like the thing is also when you take off, they have to put the nose down so you're going forward, and then but like the video you saw, it looked like it was going to drag on the ground, and before you know it, you're really high in the air. You don't even get like the courtesy of a vertical takeoff.
Yeah. Now I don't know how Bogart got his voice, but some folks have voice like that from lots and lots of drinking.
Dude, I knew a guy who was a helicopter pilot in Alaska, and he did cargo, and he's like, you don't know who had your helicopter before you, and they could have just messed the rotors up to the point where they're about to fly off, man. And I guess he was Irish, but he's like, yeah, you don't know what's gonna happen. So you kind of take your life in your own hands. But he probably uses the same helicopter every time.
Yeah, I imagine, and he was perfectly great. I don't want anybody getting the wrong idea. But it's, I guess my bias is, I heard, and I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Everybody buckle up, buckle up. It's like in a helicopter, what difference does it make?
Pog and rum.
But anyways, so I'm sorry that I'm being unfair to him. He was a lovely, lovely guide and a great helicopter driver?
Pilot?
No? Pilot? Yes, pilot. All right, let's watch the next video.
And we have Jurassic Park Falls right side.
I see it.
All right, Joy, watch out for the dinosaur.
Yeah, sure. What? Waterfalls. Wow, there's so many waterfalls here.
So like, that's the actual Jurassic Park waterfall?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, so yeah, there's a bunch of places in different islands in Hawaii where they shot Jurassic Park. And every time you go, you're like, oh, right, yeah, that is, wow, that's right, that is the thing. And then I realized why Kauai in particular has all those grooves in the mountains. You know how it's so ridged? It's because it's all waterfalls.
Really?
The middle of Kauai is where it has the most precipitation anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
And so you can't even fly into it because it's constantly raining, right? So you kind of fly around it.
Yeah.
And so that was old waterfalls that dug those ridges into the mountains.
It's crazy, and it's the oldest of the islands besides Ni'iau, which is even further northwest. This and more trivia. But yeah, I think that's the best island. Kauai. Like my dad's friend is like Hawaiian and not like a Hawaii resident. Like the style guide says you have to say Hawaii resident if they're not like of Hawaiian heritage. So he's Hawaiian, so he was like, come with us, and he took us one time to Kauai and he showed us like all these cool little places. But he's like, yeah, this is the best island because it's just like the most, when you think Hawaii, you're more hard pressed to find like a giant resort Waikiki type situation, and more often than not, you'll find just like a little neighborhood.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Super Hawaii, super awesome. And it has the waterfalls, and then it has the amazing coast, and then it has the bays, and it has all these things. That's fantastic. And then, it's great going with the kids. So Pro is like, wow, all those waterfalls, you heard him say, right? Yeah. And then I, of course, tell Joy, watch out for the dinosaurs, and she's like, and then she's back to not Barbie, not from.
There was a great moment where it's like, what? Whoa. Just like, wait a minute, is he serious about there being dinosaurs? That's what's so cool about like bringing kids, I imagine. Just like they're seeing all this stuff for the first time.
No, this is a wonderful age. And part of the reason we do these post games is like fun life lessons and stuff and just hanging out. But like, you gotta really enjoy your kids when they're young. It hasn't happened to me yet, but it doesn't have to happen to me for me to know it. And I've had 1,000 people warn me, wait till they get to be teenagers, right? So before they get to be teenagers, when they still have a sense of wonder, this huge innocence, and they don't hate you yet, like that's the trifecta,
yeah.
Right? And you hit all of that in a vacation like this: sense of wonder, like an innocence of like, wow, a double rainbow, that's amazing. Didn't even know double rainbows were possible because I haven't seen that video on YouTube yet.
Right. Your kids like double rainbow all the way.
Yeah, in fact, I think the first time we went was actually 4 years ago. I think Joey was 2. Anyway, I remember I did this magic trick and so she's 2 and Pro is 4 at the time. So they still believe in magic at the time. And so I said, guys, we came to this place and it was an Airbnb, but there's only one bed. I don't know what we're gonna do here. All right, let me just try this. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I'm gonna do a magic trick on the couch and see if I can turn it into a bed. And I went through this whole thing. Actually, I first tried it on the cabinet and I was like, I knocked on it, and I was like, Shazam, shabam. And we looked and opened the drawers. Nah, it didn't turn into a bed. And then I was like, okay, I did it on the bed, couch. It was like, Shazam, shabam. And then I said, wait a minute, and I opened it. And that's the greatest. You've got kids that are 2 and 4. You gotta do stuff like this. They're like, it worked. There's a bed out of the couch. And for like, to this day, now with a wink in their eye, they're like, Baba, you gonna do magic anytime we're in a hotel room? You gonna do magic? You gonna do magic with the couch? Right.
I like those moments. Like, I lived in college, I lived with like 2 brothers, and one lied to the younger one his whole life. And then when we were in college, he was still discovering things that his older brother lied to him about.
Yeah.
Like there was one that like he had convinced, they were big Notre Dame fans, and they convinced him that you couldn't go to Michigan. The reason they never went to a Michigan Notre Dame game at Michigan is because the law was if you were on Michigan's campus as a Notre Dame fan, they could just punch you.
Oh, that can't be true.
So we were there, and Michael is like, yeah, it's weird because we never went to Michigan because they could punch you. Tom lied to me. It's just like a great little moment.
Of course.
So your kids are gonna have that moment where they're like, I think they just make self a bed.
Yeah, well, look, to be fair, like I fell for a lot of it too. Of course, we all do, right? When we're kids. But in my case, it was Turkish propaganda, and so I was in Turkish elementary school until middle of 3rd grade. And at some point they taught us that the Turks have never lost a war outside of World War I, because that one was a little unavoidable, right? Like it's hard to fudge that one, right? And so I really believed it. And I remember, I'm hoping it was high school and not college, but I'm not positive, where I read about how the Turks had lost some battle. And I was like, well, that can't be right because the Turks, oh no. Like, I can't believe that I'm either 17 or 19 or whatever I am.
Yeah.
And it never occurred to me that that was bullshit propaganda. Of course, the Turks have lost millions of battles. They've also won millions of battles, but of course they lost. And they'd be like,
enough fights.
It's so dumb. But you just don't think about it. I had this epiphany the other day. So we wanted to go to a mini vacation earlier in the summer for just like 2 days. Wendy's friends were gonna go to San Diego. That's when I went to Old Town San Diego, okay? I almost literally took my horse to that Old Town Road.
Right.
Okay, and we were listening to it on the way there. Anyways, but the first night we looked at hotels in Laguna Beach. We're gonna go Laguna Beach then San Diego, right? Kind of a half staycation.
And Laguna Beach was way too expensive, but right outside of Laguna Beach was Dana Point, and there was a beach that overlooked, a hotel that overlooked the water, walking distance to a gorgeous beach, and several $100s less, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
It's not, easiest choice I ever made, right? And but fast forward to about a week ago, it occurred to me weirdly in the car, like, why do I think Laguna Beach is better than Dana Point when it's the same thing?
Well, one had an MTV series and the other didn't.
Exactly, guys. So this is an important lesson in here. Media is the culture, and media burrows into our heads without us knowing it.
Yeah.
So because I had heard about Laguna Beach growing up, but I had not heard about Dana Point, in my head and in the heads of a lot of people, and that's why the hotels cost more in Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach is awesome and Dana Point doesn't exist, right? And once it gets into the back of your head, good luck ever routing it out. And unfortunately, and so that Laguna Beach is harmless, like having that in the back of your head, but there's a lot of things in the back of your head that are not harmless that got there through media. And so part of what we're trying to do at TYT, and I know it's a grand ambition, is media can a lot of times poison the world, but it could also unpoison the world.
Yeah.
So with that note, speaking of unpoisoning the world, let's do one more video from Hawaii because that brings us to heaven. So let's watch one more.
Why do people look so tiny from up here?
Because when you're up high, everything looks small. Now we're leaving the Tony Stark area because we don't want him to think we're going to fire missiles from the helicopter like in the movie.
I thought that was a good little moment.
Yeah, so there was an area that's a military base that looked like one of the Avengers homes or Tony Stark's original home, and I forget which Iron Man. And in that one we happened to have watched recently, helicopters come up on the coast just like that and fire missiles into Tony Stark's house. So that's why I made that illusion. And he's like, oh yeah, that's.
That's why you have kids, so you can just lie to them. That's what it is.
Bro's 9, so he knows that it's not true.
Right.
But it's still kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, that's like play. Play is just making stuff up and having a good time for a minute.
Yeah. How gorgeous is that island?
It's ridiculous.
Jesus Christ, man.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Here's the fast version. I did this just to show how terrifying it must be to get this close to mountains. I just sped it up really fast. Whoa!
Yeah.
That's what you're doing, albeit much slower, but that was horrifying.
I like this fast version. Oh, and and that little beach, if you can get into that beach, you can only get there by boat. Oh my God, Jesus. And you say it's like out of the movies, because it is out of the movies. He told us like 4 or 5 different movies that were shot on those secluded beaches
Like
on that
Lost
gorgeous
and
coast.
Stuff.
Lost, I think, is a different Hawaiian island.
Gotcha.
Yes, and there was some old Jessica Lange movie that was shot on the beaches there and stuff. And then, of course, Zuckerberg has the biggest house at the tip of the island.
Oh, really?
Yeah, speaking of Tony Stark's house.
Right, and that's the one you wanted to build the wall around and stuff. And
yeah,
there's a bunch of controversy.
But somehow the Russians found their way in.
As they do, as they do.
I'm kidding. He did get in a little bit of trouble. We covered it on the show once. What's cool about Hawaii is every beach is by law publicly accessible, and that one is not something that Brett's friend made up. So that's why the Zuckerbergs, et cetera, were like, no, this is my beach, and they're like, sorry, it doesn't really work that way.
It's awesome.
Yeah. All right, guys. Much love. We'll see you tomorrow.